Industry Administrator, Dr. Isaac Maeda. Aquaculture and Livestock Support Manager, Todd Lowe. Quality Assurance Division Administrator, Dr. Leo Obaldo. Commodities Branch Manager, Keith Otsuka. Our Measurement Standards Branch, Richard Cohen. I didn't see Rick here, yeah, okay. And then our Plant Pest Control Branch Manager, Dr. Han Lau. Pesticides Branch Manager, Esther Reichert. Plant Quarantine Manager, Jonathan Ho. Christopher Kishimoto, our Plant Quarantine Inspection and Compliance Officer. Administrative Executive Specialist, Carol Okada. GIS Manager, Craig Cluett. Joey Ooka, our Food Safety Specialist. And finally, June Tuliao, our Hemp Specialist.
Okay, you wanna just go straight to table 6.
Table 6, okay, yeah. Oh, and Sharon was not able to make it, and she extends her apologies for not being able to attend today. Table 6.
Maybe you can just explain the reason for the increases.
Okay.
There's only 2, right? The ceiling increase.
Yeah, the ceiling increases. Okay, so the Animal Quarantine Special Fund increase is because we need to do, we've been kind of developing electronic system for bringing in the dogs and the cats for the rabies quarantine program. This is to kind of finalize that and do the final upgrades for that computer program.
Okay, the second one.
And then the second one is to our pesticides branch has been getting additional staffing because of the Act 236. So we're looking for additional space. They're kind of tight right now. So we want asking for an increase in the ceiling to fund those office renovations.
Okay, and then the third one is just federal ceiling.
Yeah, it's just a federal ceiling on the brown tree snake program.
And that's because what?
I think that was an increase in the funding, right? Oh, check.
You gotta speak
Oh,
to
Jonathan, yeah.
Good morning, chairs, vice chairs, members of the committee. Jonathan Ho, Plant Quarantine Branch Manager. Yeah, so the ceiling is being increased because it's been told to us that this is likely the last year that we're going to be getting the federal grant funding for that program.
And how much is the total grant?
We haven't received it yet, but generally about between $350,000 to $400,000 a year.
That's for the prevention of the brown tree snake.
Yeah, so that's inspections, 24 hours a day, 365, trapping, detector dog, yeah. And rapid response efforts and training.
Is that because we don't have the problem anymore?
Thankfully, we do not have a brown tree snake, and you know that has a lot to do with not just us, but our federal partners and local partners in Guam. The administration, I think, is the federal administration is, I think, looking at kind of minimizing things, so they want to direct all the funds only to be used in Guam. Not for use in Hawaii.
That's okay. If the snakes get on the plane from Guam and we miss the inspections, then we have to deal with it ourselves at our own costs at the airports. That's what's going to happen. And the airlines will end up paying for that service, I'm sure.
Oh, after this year, though, right?
Yes, so this year we should be having the funds, and then but yeah, so the federal folks do so the federal inspections are still going to occur. That's not going to stop.
Yeah.
So it's they're not funding the secondary inspection basically, which is the state portion. And sometimes they do miss flights, which is very rare. But we will still be working with those partners regardless of whether we're getting the federal grant, because obviously we don't want brown tree snakes to be entered into the state.
They're kind of, in a sense, not safe, but I think the flights from Guam is only at DKI airport. I don't think the Guam flights go direct into those like Maui and Kauai. So, but then,
Yeah, so we inspect flights not just from Guam. We'll also do like Australia, Saipan, other places that either have brown tree snakes, which are naturally occurring or may have been introduced. And I want to say last year, I think there were 4 flights that did not come to Honolulu. I think there was like 2 in Kona, 1 in Maui, and 1 in Kauai or something like that. So those are like private jets, for example, not necessarily like commercial flights, but we do inspect those as well.
So how many snakes have you found?
The last time a snake was found is in like the 90s. So the program obviously it has been effective, but again, just because we haven't found a snake doesn't mean we should stop checking.
well, you never know too, because if, what they're doing is they're hijacking and they might have just fallen off into the ocean somewhere. 3 of them. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
Senator Lavelle.
Since you guys are preparing, you guys already know that you guys are not going to get the federal grant. What are you guys doing to talk to our delegates to emphasize the administration for the federal side to let them know how important it is to continue this program? Is anybody from your guys' department reaching out to our delegates in the federal? Any of them?
I think we're gonna be going up shortly with the Lieutenant Governor to meet with USDA.
Yeah.
And we can let them know at that time that our concerns about that.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Question. Yeah, go ahead.
It's a supplemental budget hearing, but following up on the ag forms, the declaration forms for coming in. Last 2 flights I've been on, it's been electronic, and I don't know if has it rolled out completely? And is there enough funding to do it, and how is that being administered? I realize this is operational, but
Yeah, so all the domestic flights are now under the program. And we used existing funds to create the system and maintain it. We're still using existing budgeted funds to continue it. And right now, I don't believe that we're going to need more funding to continue using the system as it is, because it's pretty straightforward. If we're going to do a large scale, I guess, revamp of the system, that may require some funding with the DOT or the Go Hawai'i app. There's some a funneling of folks to that app through the end of the ag forum. Obviously we're still working with DOT and HTA to make sure all of that stuff is seamless. But yeah, we don't expect any major needs of funding to maintain that program.
who's reviewing the data? Is the funding in place to be sure that you fill out the form, but then it's online, so it's going somewhere? Who's
Directly to
reviewing
us.
that to make sure?
Yeah, it's coming directly to the department,
But who's reviewing it?
coordinating branch staff.
Okay, so all day, every day, because there's a lot of flights that come in.
Yes. Yeah, so we're tied into the OAG system, so that's the system that DOT uses for all of the flights. So the system, so each individual passenger fills out digitally, and the staff have, for all intents and purposes, instantaneous access to the data. Basically what ends up happening is people declare, it goes into a bucket, which we can see, and the airlines provide us the passenger count, crew count, origin, things like that. And what happens is once they do that, all the passengers who are on that particular flight, they get pulled from the bucket, and then the staff can then go through it.
But
And
at some data center, they don't have like, because when we went to New Zealand, we actually saw that they actually have a room full of computers, full of staff.
it's in the cloud, essentially.
So who's, what he's asking, who is actually sitting at a desk, reviewing all that in real time?
Our staff.
Where?
Wherever they have a computer at the airport.
How many people?
So there's no actual designated area. People are just like wherever they're at.
Yes. So for example, in Honolulu, there's an office. So they go into the office, they log into the computer, they know which flights are coming, they can check everything. So
Should seem to be more formalized than so loose. Like when we went to go see the New Zealand one, they were way more formalized, way more professional, not loosey-goosey.
Done.
Because we're talking, Chair, we're talking biosecurity. And it's fine if we're collecting it, it's a step forward. But your comments, you said they can review it as opposed to they are reviewing it. My concern is stuff is going to fall through the cracks, which we know it does anyway, but that's why the chair is talking about formal.
yeah, so so specifically for Akamai arrival, like we don't have a night shift yet, but we're using overtime to check every flight that comes in at the airport.
Yes, we gave you quite a bit of positions.
Statewide, I think it's 17, I believe. That's it with the old ones and the new ones.
What happened to the Biosecurity Academy that was supposed to be established with Leeward? Carol.
We're having discussions with the Leeward Chancellor, and we're talking about them at first starting off with this following us through ours so that we can prepare the students. So that I think before we start the curriculum, I'm sure they're already having biosecurity classes, but we're trying to formalize a biosecurity campus. So we have a set curriculum of what we need.
Yeah, well, we got to expedite that
Yeah.
because DoCare has an academy, right? You go through with HCC.
Mhm.
So you get hired by DoCare. If you pass the academy within probation, you get hired. You don't pass, you don't get hired.
Yeah.
So it was supposed to duplicate what DoCare already does so that DHER doesn't give us a hard time.
Right.
But it's already done. There's a template for it. Leeward is willing to do it. So we got to expedite that.
Right.
Because if not, how are you going to fill these positions?
Yeah. So what we're also doing is there seems to be two needs. One is just for the inspector line, the actual ones who wear the badge, carry out the inspections, do the violations. And then there's another need, which is actually on the ground doing the response work.
No, yeah.
And so when we asked the chancellor, because one of his main things was that we need to be able to have careers for these
Yeah.
students coming out, not just jobs. And so what we're aiming to do is create a higher level technician that the salary is then a career. And we talked to him about that and he was amenable to that. And so what we're going to be pursuing, because there's actually two needs, is go that two routes with them. And so only if that student wants to go further and become a full-on inspector, then they need additional time on a fourth year or added experience. But otherwise, we can get them on board as a
But
research
if you guys look at your
technician.
guys' vacancies, I mean, you have like pages of vacancies. So you guys got to figure out how you're going to start filling them.
Yeah.
Also, if, you're gonna try to make a perfect system for a career, right now we need jobs. So you need to start to get them in there. And while they're on the job, then they can decide if they're gonna be a
Yeah.
career. If you're gonna wait till you have a whole curriculum for a career, we're never gonna fill it.
Right. We
Yeah.
have a number of 89-day hires that don't quite meet the requirements, but they are interested. So we have them in the field.
But even if you don't finalize the full academy,
Start.
just get the CTE certificate so that they can do dual credit, early college,
Okay.
like get it going, get something going. Because if not, why we gave you guys all these positions if you're not gonna fill them?
We can use the money.
You know, and I mean, there's interest to make sure that this is 24/7
So do you have a
on every island.
do you have a curriculum that you're giving to the high school so that they are aware of the needs? And
No. So
No, not
what's
yet.
supposed to happen is they're supposed to work with Leeward. Leeward will establish the curriculum. DOE will then work off Leeward's curriculum to feed into Leeward. But it has to start with the community colleges.
Mhm.
So once the CTE certificate, then
And
the
then,
DOE can link it.
and Leeward is also agreeable to have the classes that have prevented inspectors from being hired, which is like classes on entomology, UH.
Yeah.
I know it doesn't have it every semester. It's very limiting. So they're agreeing to have that class, so a student can just take
Yeah,
that
but this has been
class.
changing all these MQs, right? Because some of them require just a bachelor's degree in nothing specific. So you could have a journalism bachelor's degree, like some people at this table, and work at Department of Ag and have no ag experience versus if you have a CTE ag certificate, but yet you cannot get the job because you don't have the bachelor's.
Right.
That, I don't know, DHERD and DOA got to really clean this up. And I know lots of employees are like, hey, well, I had to get my bachelor's. Well, too bad. This is we got to figure out how we're going to fill these positions and hire local people.
Right.
So what's the anticipated date to get this on board?
You know, they're willing, so it's a matter of we have the money to enter into the contract. That starts it off. So the beginning is they're just trying to reach out to who has all the curriculums available and then to come up with a set one. It's as far as
What's your target date?
this third quarter. So we're trying to move on it now.
So are you asking for money for that?
No,
No,
we have
It started to, you have the.
no, they have the monies from the previous bill.
We have the fund from the previous bill. It was a matter of where our resources are, and right now there's so many battles because the pests keep on moving, and yet we have to keep ongoing operations. So right now, Jonathan but his primary function in the hiring is in settling all the higher level positions. As we go 5s and 4s, then it goes back into
Yeah, but I don't think you guys can
Fence-based
work
inspector.
sequential. You have to work,
Let's go do it.
you have to multitask. Because if
Yeah.
not, we're in tough times, we're gonna take the money.
right.
So a lot of these vacancies, you know, like lots of members, they don't want to put the hold on the tax breaks. Right, and not one department cut, not one department said, oh, we're gonna give up special funds, not one department says we're gonna give up cash balances. So we haven't even cut any budget, yet we're gonna take away tax breaks from the public. So if you guys aren't ready and you're not gonna be able to spend it so that you can do these things, then we gotta look at where we're gonna grab money so that we can preserve whatever tax breaks we can for the public.
Okay.
Question.
Mhm.
So the program, no matter, you have the resources, you have the monies, you need to fill the vacancies, the personnel, but it seems like I'm hearing that you're supposed to be organizing with the university, right?
What's the question?
So that means that is the university or are they willing to
no,
accept
they
the
will.
program?
Yeah.
So they're primarily doing our diagnostics right now. They're working on research for like the 2-line spittle, CRB, LFA.
But we're talking about classes, right?
We
No,
haven't
for
gone,
instance, like the
we
Coast Guard
haven't,
Academy has a number of classes,
Yeah.
and then you get a certificate,
For
and then you
that-
can work at dole care.
yeah,
So
We're
they're trying to
saying we're
do
not
that.
ready.
no, for
No,
that,
these guys are the slope guys.
yeah,
Lever's
for-
ready. These guys gotta hurry up, because Lever's been waiting.
right.
And a lot of it is the director has not corresponded and who's not here, so we could be picking on the wrong person, but Lever's been waiting.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Can I follow up on the forms? So what is the percentage of participation of the number of passengers coming in and actually answering?
Right now, it averages, it fluctuates depending on the airline, but, we're averaging a little over 72 to 75%.
So what's happening with the 25%? What are you guys doing about that?
So it's very similar to the, with the. It's very similar to with the paper form. We need good cause. And, to detain and hold them for the inspections.
Why not just say you neglected to do it? You were required to do it, you didn't do it, you get a fine.
Yeah,
You need good cause.
the-
There's a law to do it.
yeah, the checking is, to do a consistent check on all the passengers, in a uniform manner across the state is, the biggest challenge in that we don't have the staff to be able to do that
Well,
uniform.
that's what we're talking about, the Leeward Academy. We're talking about making sure we can do 24/7, 365.
No, but we're also talking about when you say that, oh yeah, they're reviewing the forms and that I have that concern because when do you review the forms? Because even the paper forms, even though we wrote down, I have a snake, nobody
Not
called
live.
you.
Yeah.
You know, nobody called
So-
you. So when are they reviewing it and are they comparing it with the
Yeah.
number of people that
If you don't
answered?
take it seriously, that 72% is gonna go down to 65, and then to 55, and then to 50.
Well-
Because they know nobody's checking, nobody's getting a fine, nothing is happening. If you start fining people, the number is gonna start going up.
Well, the other problem is, and I don't know, have you traveled and have you filled out the form
Yes,
online?
yes,
And you were able to do it easily?
yes.
Okay, because you know what? Once you check in, the form pops up. But if you don't do it right then and there, it's very hard to get the form. And we had that problem. And the house member that traveled with me, and we just came back on Tuesday, we couldn't get the form, and I couldn't get the form. So it's really hard.
The, so when the system was created, we worked with the airlines to, allow them to disseminate the form in the best way that they felt was, effective, for their systems and their clientele. And, we've, heard the same issues in that each airline does it slightly differently. And, which creates, I think, to some extent, some of the, experience issues. And, we haven't quite figured out, I guess, a way to like mandate how they're going to run their operations per se.
But isn't that part of the process? I mean, why have this if the airlines are not going to be doing it correctly or doing it so that it happens? And you guys know that is going on, but you sat there. I don't know what you guys are doing about it.
Yeah, we need to work on it. And,
Well,
What does that mean?
we could withhold airport improvement funds until the airlines comply.
You know, and the passengers are all sitting there waiting to board. Wouldn't that be a good time for them to fill in the form and when they board?
some of the airlines, that's how they're doing it. Some are doing it
Should be
in,
required for all airlines then.
Some airlines have the code when you're sitting there and they'll announce it, but they don't announce it complete all the time. So people coming in and out, you know, when you last minute get on the plane, they don't do it. And they don't have anything on the plane to do it. So if you don't do it right, well, United, if you don't do it right when you check in, the form goes away and you can't access it unless you get to the airline and they have a code. And then if you're running late or you don't remember, then you don't do it. So a lot of people are not doing it, even though
the-
we try to do it.
The flight attendants, they don't announce this on the plane.
No,
it
because-
depends on the airline. Some, they do it only on the airlines.
It's because you don't have internet on the plane.
So do they have can you have a paper form that you fill out in case you can't do it on the plane?
No, they're not.
The goal was to completely eliminate the paper forms.
Oh.
So,
But the problem is there's nobody enforcing, there's nobody looking and tweaking the system. There's nobody, I mean, and I say this because it seems that way from what you're saying, that is actually working with the airlines consistently to shore up this program. It's like, okay, we put it in, whatever, we get 70%. Thank you very much.
so the staff, so one of the best things about the,
Jonathan,
They book.
you should fix it. Stop trying to justify the status quo. It's not gonna work. And we're gonna be in circles. We're gonna keep asking questions. You're gonna keep giving us average or substandard answers. Go back and go fix it.
So
Got
that
it.
means that we're missing a lot of data because I'm sure not everybody is filling it out. Because if the forms are not popping up, they're not gonna, let's say,
Well, have you guys talked to the airlines committee? Are you talking to Kurt at airports? I mean, they all came with us on the site visit. So everybody knows what the ideal should be. We've all seen it. We all went to the mail facility. We know what should happen. I'm not sure why it's not happening now that we've seen what we should be doing.
That's true. Because you're not checking it all.
If not, why are we giving all this money, or rushing to do all of this stuff, and then you guys cannot deliver?
And then how,
So right now, the main reason that the airlines are trying to comply
No, wait,
is
you know
that
what?
in
Can you guys do it or not? Because if you cannot, this goes back to the other question of just creating a whole new department of the environment, which is on the table, and then they take biosecurity. So if you cannot do it, then we'll take it away from you and give it to somebody else. Department of Health already has vector control. So we just maybe expand that. So you either got to be serious and you guys are going to do it and do it well, or we got to figure something out. But status quo isn't working.
Chair, I have another question. So when you get these electronic forms, the survey on the back, does that come to you that's about HTA? No.
We don't have that.
So how does that work? So when the electronic form gets filled out, half the form goes to you and the other half goes directly to DBED or HTA?
There's a link that after you fill out our form, you hit the link and then it'll take you to the tourism questionnaire.
Okay, so we'd have to ask tourism how many people are actually taking the link and answering that. Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
Just one more for clarity. I know it's in the beginning, but since the launch of the Akamai program, that 25 or so %, nobody got no repercussion, no nothing?
Yeah,
Okay.
why is that though?
the only repercussion is if there isn't sufficient percentage of electronic is that they hold the plane, so the passengers cannot get off the plane.
Okay,
and
so
that has
we have to
happened.
change the law so that people can get fined.
There is a current ability to get fined.
Then why aren't you doing it?
They haven't started that citation.
So the question
exercise.
is, so you should have the data from the passenger manifest, right? And then you compare it to who completed the form,
Right, exactly.
right? Use AI to figure it out, and then you find the rest.
We do not have access to a passenger manifest.
So we should change the law so you get access to
I
it.
thought you said you did, you can compare.
We get a passenger count from the airlines that we compare against.
Can we change the law so that you collect data for every ticket that's purchased? Coming to the state of Hawaii?
Sure.
Okay, let's put that in the bill.
That's where kind of going back to what Senator Kim normally says is you guys gotta tell us what legally you need so that you can do your job.
Yeah, so I think we get the count and then we know how many filled it out and we're comparing those two, but we don't know that we cannot link each one.
So then come with the bill to
Yeah.
get the data that you need.
But-
That's what we're telling you.
If
right?
not, already try to work on MOA between airports, the airport committee and DOA. And if they say no, at least you gotta try something.
Yeah,
But you gotta
we'll
start
reach out
fighting.
to-
If not, people are not gonna take it serious.
I think it goes back to the idea that we should probably contract it out. It seems like it's gonna get stuck and we're not knowing how many, if our data of the incoming passengers are the same as what we're saying. We have so many visitors this year because I don't think people are filling out the forms.
Well, he's saying 72% are. So it's the other 25,
Contract
80%.
work out. I think it's too much burdensome. It's taking.
No, it's
taking
either you
long.
give it to these guys and they do it, or we do pursue the environment and biosecurity like other places.
That's our problem. Okay, every time we have a department that can't do the job, we're gonna contract out, then why have employees? Why have a department?
The legislature just contract all the work.
Contract out government.
That's why there needs to be follow-up, and that's where we are
I could-
today.
We contract it out.
Okay, other questions?
Yeah, so when
Correct.
people bring animals on the airplane, they're not checked to see if they had rabies or they have some certification.
The animals are all checked.
By whom? I never see.
Our animal quarantine branch. They gotta go through
When they
physical
land.
inspection, yeah, when
When they land.
Yeah,
But there are.
and if they
oth-
don't have the
No,
proper,
Let me finish.
okay.
There are other people on the airplane that have animals. So if the person on the plane has an animal that has rabies, how do we know it's not being contracted by another animal on the plane?
No,
So-
don't you guys all have to go quarantine? Isn't that you?
But that's when they
Animal.
land, not while they.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying is that.
Yeah, but that's a different, that's Dr. Maeda.
On top of that, when you
Wait,
sign up
excuse
your
me, let them
ticket,
finish the first question.
Yeah, all animals, like Dean was saying, are inspected.
Before they get on the plane.
No, after they arrive.
Yeah, okay, but after they get off the plane and you find they have rabies, what other animals that were on the plane do you
No.
contact?
They're all quarantined though, right?
Well, everything that comes in has to meet certain requirements to enter the state. And as far as if an animal has rabies or some other disease, it's not something that's going to be evident immediately, which is why we have the pre-entry requirements to minimize the risk of them having rabies. That's why the vaccination, the testing, the microchip identification. If you don't have those requirements, then the animal doesn't qualify for release and it ends up in quarantine. So if you're saying, well, what about the other animal on the plane with the one that has rabies? If the other animal did have the requirements done properly with the vaccination, testing, microchip identification, health certification, et cetera, then the risk of them contracting it is very low. That's how we can do airport release now, because we prepare the animals before they come in with all of those requirements so that the risk of them contracting it, even if they're coming in from an area that has rabies, is minimal.
Thank you.
Senator Inouye.
yes, and every passenger who has an animal
Yep.
is already registered, because when you sign in to register for your ticket, and it does say that if you have animals, so every airlines do have that data. So you're correct, you know
Yeah.
that there's so many animals on the plane and the data that you need.
There is a potential for somebody to not register or something to slip by in a sense, but that's where the ag deck comes in as a secondary backup, yeah, because we get notified if there's an animal that's on top of there.
And there are some airlines that do charge.
Yeah.
If you're bringing animals, I know Southwest doesn't for inter-island. I guess it depends on the size of the animal, but that's what I understand, and I know because I have friends that take their animals, but they have to register when they buy the tickets.
Yeah. Correct.
So, in order to bring an animal on the plane, do they have to be a service animal?
I'm sorry, I didn't.
In order to bring an animal on the plane to Hawaii, do they have to, in the passenger area, do they have to be a service animal?
In the cabin.
Yes.
Here's a kind of little bit confusing about that. The Department of Transportation has guidelines for animals carried on top of aircraft. And they allow service animals, but they also allow emotional support animals on the plane. Okay, an emotional support animal is not a service animal under ADA. So while they're allowed on the plane, when they come and they hit the island, they do not qualify as a service animal for the process of importing. So we would view them like we would a pet
I was
animal.
noticing more and more animals on the plane, and they don't look like service animals. And I don't even know they look like emotional animals as well, or emotional. And so people are just, and I've been told that the rules for a service animal is very lax. So anybody can go in and say it's a service animal, and they considered service. So
Some of that is federal,
Yeah, it's federal regulations that we don't have control on
that's
that.
above.
okay.
Okay, so you guys talking about contracts. I'm not sure if Senator Inouye already knows this, but almost half your budget is contracts. So 33 million is contracts already. So pretty soon you're gonna have more contract money than staff money. So what's the staff doing?
Yeah, what's the justification for?
So is it just gonna be that everyone's gonna manage contracts, or is the department gonna do work?
As we staff up, we should be pulling back more work within the department as we stand up our ability to do it. This is something that kind of,
But you just need.
we're relatively new in the process. Even with the electronic deck form, we just rolled it out in March. Every airline is doing it differently until we can kind of get everybody on the same page, and then we can kind of do the enforcement a little bit better. But I think, yeah, if we're gonna check whether 100% is done, we're gonna need legislation to get those manifests, and then we can do the cross checks. So,
But
a lot of these things are,
33 million in contract work.
Yeah.
Oh, contracts are table 14. So
So-
that's page 40.
those are ongoing contracts, yeah.
Yeah.
With the department, yeah, and it's because some of it is expertise that we do not have and that we're contracting out
Yeah.
on
So
research and stuff.
how do you guys evaluate the different branches as far as progress? Because the variance reports don't really show progress.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think most of them, we're just monitoring the contract as to whether they're
No,
completed.
let's take for
Yeah.
instance aquaculture. Ever since I've been here, we've been talking about aquaculture, and I don't think aquaculture has grown.
Oh, yeah, we're currently,
So like we have all these commodities, we have all these different we're managing, and then it's like we're shrinking ag. I don't understand why have the whole branch or division of aquaculture, and who's doing the regulating versus the economic development?
yeah, the regulating is kind of done by our plant quarantine branch and our
Yeah, so what does the
aquaculture
aquaculture branch do?
development branch.
Because we haven't expanded aquaculture at all.
We had some bills last year and it got killed.
Yeah, we have a bill this year to kind
But it's
of,
not about bills. Bills doesn't
Yeah.
grow in industry. We haven't had new aquaculture ag parks. How many new aquaculture farmers do we have? The problem is going back to what some of the senators are saying is you teach aquaculture at high school, but then where do you become an aquaculture farmer?
yeah, I think some of it is that we're kind of conducting a survey right now. We just contracted that out again. But we want to know what the industry needs to grow.
No, what?
And-
No,
and-
but we've talked about these goals of growing agriculture, reducing imports. What about our goals to ensure that happens? And we can reconcile that with industry, but we haven't grown aquaculture at all.
I think overall, the state got to provide more incentives for the industry,
that's
even
what
for
you guys-
agriculture.
But you guys should be coming in. Like, have you looked at assets where we should be buying land to develop aquaculture ag parks? All the aquaculture in Kahuku is no longer there because it's now U.S. Fish and Wildlife.
Yeah.
And nobody came in to say, okay, these guys are all going to lose their farms. We need new aquaculture ag land so we can move the farmers there. That never happened. So now you've just lost all those farmers. And some people think, oh, just keep funding NELHA. But NELHA is not supposed to be an ag agency. That's you guys. But it's not proactive enough. So I'm not sure and I'm just using that as one example. And we can go over each one, and we haven't grown much.
Yeah. And it's partially the staffing. We had very little staffing to do it, but I agree with you that strategically planning, we're not looking toward growing it and identifying sites that would be suitable for that. I think a lot of times the staffing has been so short that everybody is dealing, like on a day-to-day basis, they're just surviving. And I think a lot of times the entire department actually has not been envisioning as to where we gotta be.
Yeah, so
And
these thoughts
still-
have to be reconciled with ADC and I think Department of Health. So whatever you cannot do, if there's a vacuum, that doesn't mean we don't need it. So is that something like marketing? Does that go over to ADC so that you guys can actually focus on regulation and testing and research? Instead of land management, does that go over to ADC because they can acquire land versus you guys doing it? But we have to revisit this because the ability to produce more ag out of Department of Ag has not really met expectation.
Yeah,
The
I
other
do-
thing is if you don't identify some of the sites, how are you gonna employ people that are not willing to go wherever your sites are? So I think that would be one of the first
I don't know,
steps.
you need to evaluate, like there should be, I'm not sure how you guys evaluate. I forgot which department came in and said that they don't even do evaluations. Well, I know you asked one, and they said they don't even do evaluations of staff. But we need benchmarks yearly to figure out where we at.
Mm. Yeah, I agree. I think, it's something we gotta start looking proactively if we're gonna start standing up agriculture. The department in itself, because this was such a tight year, we're looking at combining all the development functions into one branch so that there's synergy among all of them there so that they can work together to support agriculture. We were envisioning ag liaison that could help guide the farmers into what resources we can offer them to start the farm and develop or move forward, because we wanted to move. When we looked at the data, a lot of the small farms cannot move the needle. It would be large scale agriculture. And last year we put in the bill for the agricultural loan program to increase the loan amounts and everything to encourage large scale agriculture, which gets economies and scale and everything. The problem is finding suitable land and everything else. So if the state really is serious about moving agriculture and aquaculture, we're gonna be asking for big money, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but the question is the department serious? Because if the department is serious, then the legislature can look at the serious proposals. But if you're waiting for us to be serious first, then why do we need you? Senator Kim?
Yeah,
From
on page 31, in the middle, you have AGR 151, $100,000 contract. This started in July 1, 2016, goes to September 30th, 21, Hawaii Farm Bureau. Solicit proposals for research projects to establish food safety procedures for Hawaii farmers. It costs us $300,000 to solicit proposals. And what happened? It just says midterm progress. Final report. But this is so old.
who's managing that contract? Don't all speak up at once. Whose contract is that? Which branch is that in?
AGR 151.
151. Warren. Leo.
This is just an example of, you have many contracts and that one just red light blinking for me.
Leo Baldo, Quality Assurance Division Administrator. You're asking question on AGR 151.
Yeah, why do you need 300 just to send out proposals?
Why is it so old?
Yeah, so this is a proposal basically when the produce safety rule was just coming out,
Yeah,
and
when was that?
way back in early 2016,
So it's not done yet?
2015. So the money, this is before my time, but the money basically was given to the Hawaii Farm Bureau to solicit proposals, to establish guidelines.
Okay,
So
so
that-
the guidelines done, it's been 9 years.
So the final report was basically submitted, but there is a final invoice that we're waiting from Farm Bureau
Since
to
20
give us.
20
Yeah, so they're revising.
Why isn't
in.
the invoice going over?
So there's a final
That
invoice.
invoice better get there today.
Well, that's not even
There
the,
were some challenges, Senator. We had to, no cost extension, we finalized, we finished the final report. We're just working with the department and close up the contract.
Okay, that-
All the projects have been.
But this kind of stuff, right? You guys should be looking at it. Hey, this is too long. So what you should be more proactive in trying to close it.
it's 4 years, it's like, Farm Bureau, 4 years, come on.
So, yeah, we've been proactive. We've been sending this communication, but we haven't at this point received a revised final invoice.
But that, can we get a breakdown? I don't understand how it would cost 300,000, 400,000 actually was appropriated. It was 300,000 was spent, 100,000 is pending, your invoice, I guess, just to solicit proposals. And how many proposals did we get? And did we go out for anything? I mean, what was the return on investment on this?
There are several proposals, let me think. So there's money given to Nurture EBP to do some,
Wait, is that all in the report?
yeah, it's one big report. So, and there's money
Yes,
given to
that-
numbers.
Can we see this report that they turned in? They did.
We can prove it.
9/21?
Yeah,
Is
we
that
can
what-
provide it to you.
That was when the report was turned in, 4 years ago, 5 years ago.
Around that time.
Okay, and I mean,
We did have several extension
didn't
because
things change in that time? If you haven't acted on it, wouldn't there
So-
be changes?
You gotta close your, you can't just leave things lagging.
yeah,
They
we,
haven't acted on it, and so everything changed, so now whatever they got proposals is moot.
So it's a solicitation of proposals, but did you get proposals? Did you
So-
actually execute on those?
just a little background here. So the money basically is given to Hawaii Farm Bureau to do the
Did you
solicitation.
answer her question?
Yeah.
Did you actually get proposals?
Yes.
And what did you do?
Did
with
you
the-
execute on the proposals?
Yeah, Farm Bureau basically, did all the solicitation and they get proposals and they give the money to those approved proposals.
Okay, so we
And-
need a final report on this.
And we did have a final report.
Yeah, so she's just
With
asking
the
for a copy of it,
proposals.
yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, you got a final report here, but I want to see what proposals were actually
Yeah.
done and what was the result of that
We
That-
can give you the,
proposal, right?
yeah, we have a copy.
The project, including the projects that were
Yeah, the
executed?
project that was executed and what happened with those
The-
projects.
They're all included in that report.
Senator Richards.
Thank you. The chair has said it's going to be a hard financial year, and we're looking at that. You talk about your vacancy list. And we talked about this last year as a department, combining some of those positions to bump the payroll so you can fill these positions, because I know that's another complaint. We talked about this last year. Has that been done? Are you guys looking to get that done? Because again, we are here to help solve some of these problems. If we have to change something in the law, that's why we are here. But if we have a massive vacancy, what are we doing to address that? And have we combined positions? Have we sought to do the paperwork to combine positions?
I wouldn't have to.
Everybody's looking around, so I'm going to guess no.
I don't think we've done that.
The funds in the
Okay.
Yeah.
budget.
Um,
Somebody should take
Right now, we're just trying to fill the existing positions, but we haven't really found too much problems. It's certain positions like veterinarians that are very difficult to hire. We had people come in and made offers and the pay was just too low. But for the bulk of it, I think it's just we are getting applicants and it hasn't been so much of a pay issue for those.
But in some cases, do you?
But in some cases,
But
it
do you
is.
need
Yeah.
the vet? Could you just do vet tech?
Or-
I mean, wouldn't that be better than not nobody?
We need the veterinary. For some of these positions, that the veterinarians are in, we need to have a capability of them to do certain things which are only within a veterinarian, a licensed
No,
veterinarian.
but you have your veterinary assistant,
Yeah.
got veterinary program manager, you got plenty of this veterinary medical office. I mean, you guys got quite a bit of positions that are vacant. So
Yeah.
my feeling is, could you at least take some people who have some qualifications to fill some of them? Because
Not-
Windward Community College has a
Yeah.
vet tech program.
Right.
And if you guys could work with them, maybe they could create a pipeline. But just doing nothing.
We've
doesn't get-
actually talked to Windward Community College about their veterinary technicians and so.
And then what?
I mean, we don't get anybody, right? I mean, we do get some referrals from them for our positions, but for our veterinarians,
Yeah, well,
we need We need a licensed veterinarian. We
No,
can't.
that's fine. It's just, you guys gotta be more proactive in trying to figure this out, because if not, if we're not gonna fill it.
Yeah.
And you're gonna wait for the perfect person, then lots of these don't even have an expected fill date. So
Yeah,
if
it's
you're not gonna fill them, then we might as well take them back.
Yeah, it's not a perfect, we're not waiting for a perfect person, believe me. We've interviewed and like Dean has mentioned, there's some veterinarians that we offered positions to, but relocation and pay and salary and everything else, just, they can't do it.
Which comes back to combining positions to get that done. And I appreciate, Dr. Maeda, what you're saying, because we've had this conversation before, but we've got to, as the chair is saying, we've got to find the solution. And it's a hard financial time now, so let's get after it. Otherwise, you're going to lose the funding on it.
Yeah, we actually met with DHER too, with Claire. And we met with 5 of the DHER people from, is that classification? Yeah. And this was specifically to dealing with our vacancies and our veterinarians and veterinary related type of positions and livestock inspectors. So we are, because part of that involves also the meat inspection, and trying to get positions to operate that program. And so we are working with DHER, and we're not kind of just not doing anything. We are aware of it, and it is a problem.
So what's the timeline though?
As far as
we can't just be like, it's a problem, we're gonna let this thing linger.
we're gonna interview again, so we'll see. But
if you're not gonna fill it within the next year, then we might as well take it. And when you actually can fill it, then we'll fund it again.
Yeah,
That's where we're at, because so far from hearing the members, I think they're really reluctant on freezing any type of tax breaks that were given. So that means we have to figure out where we're going to find the money.
Yeah.
And if positions are not going to be filled and there's money sitting there, that's one option for us. So you're either going to pursue it and we can preserve it,
fill it.
or if you're not going to pursue it because you don't have a timeline, then that's something we got to look at taking.
No, we're trying to fill it this year.
Yeah, well,
I mean, we have
a couple months
got
before the Senate
applicants.
gets the budget. So
Yeah.
hopefully you guys hear the message.
Heard.
Yeah, just a couple of questions, since we're talking about the vets. Reason why I brought this up to Senator Richards, yeah, we have a great tech program. But what are we doing to invest in getting actually, of course, here on island? Because we have a lot of kids in my district. We have beautiful, humane society, but they have no place to go to school. They have to go to the continent.
Well, Windward has a vet tech program,
Yeah,
but
but
they don't
vet
have a
tech-
vet program.
Yeah, so that's why I understand the vet tech to be, what they're looking for is veterinarians, right?
Yeah.
So vets that go take that Windward, they're gonna be on tech all their life. If there's gonna be, are you guys working with the colleges to try to find, but Senator De La Cruz always talk about the pathways. Because in my community, in Campbell, I gave Campbell, for example, they're interested. They're probably gonna go to the tech program, but after that, where they're gonna go?
Yeah, so this question, we should ask Windward.
Okay.
Because Windward that's what we've been asking, is Windward partner with other universities
Yes.
so that they have when you graduate from the
Yes.
vet tech program, how can you continue so that
Yes.
you can actually be a vet, because
Right.
we're short, Hawaii short vets.
Yes, big time.
Both for the ag side, Dr. Mehta side, and the pet side.
Yes.
And this is something we've discussed, and I've discussed this with Dr. Maeda as well. Nationally and internationally, we're short of vets. And so this is not a problem. And so I can appreciate the fact of why they're having trouble hiring vets. But that's why I asked, so let's combine some positions or whatever, to
Salaries,
boost it,
yeah.
because you have the people, but you didn't have the payroll.
Oh, and this is kind of serious stuff too.
Yeah,
So
it
we're
is.
talking about like the quarantine. If we're gonna scale up,
Security.
but not other than that, but the commodities with pork and beef, you need the inspection.
Yeah,
I
you're
mean, you
talking
need
about
lots of
food,
stuff. So,
right. Food safety.
I mean, I'm for ag, but you gotta keep it going. You guys gotta get going. Wait.
Yeah, the last question.
Sorry, table 14 on page 26, the top item, marketing. This was something that your chair had introduced, which was a part of putting commercial ads to try to recruit, fill vacancies, those kinds of things. So I'm noticing not only by your presentation, but by the discussion here today, that the choke point continues to be Department of Agriculture. And the reason that I say that is because you have Leeward Community College that's willing to implement a program. You have the Hele'emua program that is Department of Labor that is willing to pay to have, whether it's high school students or college students, to learn with the potential of a long-term position. And so there's a few elements to what you folks are saying as far as vacancies, but it seems like the state is giving everything. We've given you potential programs with Department of Education. We've given a whole division, commercial markets, and so on and so forth. So the point that I'm trying to make is that DOA, or Department of Ag, is coming to the ledge and continuing to ask for more, whether it be positions, whether it be funding, whether it be ideas, but I don't hear you folks taking any accountability for why we're at the point that we're at. Now, there was a statement that was made about, if the state wants to move on this, then, we have to be willing to invest, which I believe that we've invested tens of millions of dollars year after year. We have pages, $33 million in contracts going out. You folks have pages of vacancies that are happening. And to this gentleman's point about we're not able to hire, but they're applying. So if the reason for you not filling the vacancies is because they don't want to relocate or because of the salaries, that stuff is all on the website. So they know the location is in Hawaii. They know what the salary is. If they're willing to fill out the application to go through the interview process, something is falling between the cracks. And I have a hard time believing that somebody is going to take the time to go through the website, fill out the application, go to the interview and say, oh, you know what? I just found out that the salary is X amount of dollars, or that I have to relocate. So there's something that's missing here. And I believe it's within the department, because now the discussion is, should we impose fines on people that are not following the process, where you folks have the data, but you don't even have the manpower to impose any kinds of fines or any kinds of consequences or any kinds of regulations. So here we are trying to pitch all of these ideas where the discussion, if you think of how massive this is, we are willing to impose fines on the public if they don't comply. So what happens when we do that? And you folks, again, are left with the data. Where do we go from there? You don't have the staffing. You don't have the wherewithal to encourage participants to be a part of these programs. So here we are, you folks are saying, we don't have the staffing, we don't have the vacancy. We're giving anthropology marketing group $250,000. So what have we gotten out of that? What have we gotten when we're over here, with Leeward Community College, with Windward Community College, with all of these incentives, and yet you folks still come here and you sit here and say, we need more incentives. So with all of discussion here today, I don't hear Department of Ag taking any accountability, because it sounds like the buck stops with you. So
Well, as far as vacancies, we are making progress. We was at 149. We're now down to 116. So it's not like we're not doing it. We're trying everything we possibly can, including doing anthology contracts to let people know that we have jobs out there. I agree we should be moving more into the training thing, and we gotta but we still need to work with other departments like DHER to accept that trainee is acceptable to them for the position.
yeah, but that's more operational things, right? Working with DHER and the minimum qualifications. But what I'm talking about is Leeward Community College. You have these programs ready to go, and the lag seems to be with Department of Agriculture. So all of the operational things, the internal things, all that stuff, I understand that takes a while, but you have been given an opportunity to collaborate with Department of Education, which that's where the best place to recruit candidates. And you folks seem to be slow to come to the table.
I can respond to the veterinarian situation that you mentioned about applicants that go through the process, but then decide not to take it. It's not that they're saying that they didn't realize the salary was what was posted. What they're saying is that after they thought about it more in depth to relocate their family and what have you, they didn't feel that that was going to be adequate. I mean, I can only take for what they're telling me, right? So this is the story that we're hearing. So whether or not it's, something that we want to take at face value, or there's something else that's hidden there, that's basically the story that I'm getting.
No, but if that's going to be the trend and the consistent answer, going back to Senator Richards' point, then change the system so we get a different reaction.
Yeah,
Double the positions or combine positions, look at the different salary. Like we can't keep doing the same thing, get the same response, and then we're at the same place. So
yeah.
what can we do so we can fix these problems?
Yeah, and if that's the biggest objection, then aggressively recruit locally. Aggressively recruit locally.
Locally, what we're doing is when we recruit locally, and we do it aggressively, but it's a competition between private sector. And if you look at local veterinarians in general, private sector are usually small animal practice, companion animal. And the salaries for those types of positions are quite high. And it is nationally actually quite high.
Okay, then that should be your request. Yeah,
So
then increase
what do
it.
you have to do so you're competitive?
Yeah, increase the salary.
Or if the
What's
vets are,
your request?
Well,
Okay,
it's not so easy because it's complicated what we have to do with DHER.
then we should just take the money. If it's so hard for you and you cannot get it done, then we might as well take the positions and the money.
Yeah, if you do that, then it just makes it worse.
Okay, but even if it's sitting there, you're not doing anything about it anyway.
We are trying as much as we can to get the salaries increased through DHER, but it's not something that we can just go ahead and establish
Have you come into us at all
for.
for the increase in salaries? Have you come into us?
I didn't know that was an option as far as increasing salary above listed. No, so
Person. I mean, we put the money, so who are you gonna ask?
I mean, you can,
before.
yeah, we can get that, but as far as us being able to offer certain rates for, different types of positions, it's not something that we can just do.
You gotta come in and you have to reorganize or what do you?
Or introduce a new bill.
Okay,
At least ask for it. I mean, if we say no, then at least you could say, we try. But if you don't even let us know or ask.
I don't know
then we
if,
can't.
yeah, I can't speak to the definite as far as what the HR
just a question.
policy is
What
involved.
does your vet do, or do you have these vet assistants so that at least the work can be done by other kinds of the scope of work? It can be
Some of
looked
the,
at.
some of the work that they do has to be done by a licensed
Yeah.
accredited.
What she's talking about is the sum of the work that doesn't have to be by a licensed person.
Yeah, that's what we have.
Yeah, so then that way that should be the tech. So at least some of the work is getting done at a salary that you have. And at least we can work with Windward to fill some of those positions.
Yeah, actually, all of our veterinary assistant positions we got one that's currently going to be filled. But it's not been a problem to fill veterinary assistants. It's a problem with the veterinarians.
Well, can't you,
Yeah.
at least the people in those positions, you start training them up so that you might be able to grow your own, but at least start the work that they need to have
We
done.
do train them and try to encourage them, but ultimately they got to go through vet school and get licensed. So that's where the hang up is. The cost and expense for them to do that.
Okay, we need a major reorg of Department of Ag because this isn't working. We really gotta figure this out. Senator Favela.
Okay, so, oh my gosh, so I've been here about 8 years, yeah. Senator De La Cruz been asking, and now I'm hearing about the agriculture and the land, yeah. But you telling us that we gotta be serious in the game when 8 years now, 8 years, we still don't have accountability on how much land we need to be sustainable. We still don't have that. Okay, now we lost the agriculture with Senator De La Cruz. Did anybody in the department, did the custodian, did anybody in the parking lot know that we're gonna lose that land to come back to us to see? Senator De La Cruz say all the time, secure ag land, right? So nobody thought to secure the agriculture, the aquaculture that we had that we lost, all those farmers. Did you guys drive down that side of the island? Did you guys look on empty areas? You guys even drive out of the area that you guys go? Because I'm telling you right now, no, you think it's funny. You like smile. You think it's funny. No, because you know why?
Because I was out there.
No, but the thing is, no, but the thing is, what I'm saying is, you guys still don't have the answer. But you're telling the senators here, okay, that we gotta put skin in the game. We gotta be more serious if we want it done. We're just as serious as a heart attack. You know what's listening to anybody here? We are serious.
If you're serious, I'll put together a plan.
Yeah.
I'll put together a plan on agriculture and ag.
We can't act on any plan unless you put it together and give it to us. Have you done that?
We'll do that.
I just one quick comment. I'm Andrew Robinson. I'm the acting ag loan administrator. Specifically on aquaculture, there's sometimes challenges. We've given 6 loans over the past like 20 or 30 years in aquaculture. They've all defaulted. So, we're trying our best.
Where are those farmers? On whose land?
They're all over the island. So
Whose land? Who owns the land?
I'd have to look at the specifics.
Yeah, so the point is, most farmers are not going to be able to buy or lease lands from the private sector.
We get it, yeah.
Which is why the state has to acquire land and provide affordable leases. That has not occurred. We don't have one aquaculture ag park.
I get that part.
So if you can get that part, then you can at least offer more leases to aquaculture farmers. We haven't done that. I don't know what the aquaculture is doing. We need to, if not the pipelines at the DOE for aquaculture farmers or aquaponics, there's no end game. There's a cliff, and then there's where they're going to have a career. So if we can't get land from the private sector, then the state has to provide it to meet our goals.
I get that piece.
Your loan thing is separate from them going and looking for aquaculture ag land that we can acquire.
I just wanted to make the one comment that specifically in terms of loans, there is a lot of demand. We have $5 million to loan out each year. We've turned down like $6 to $10 million already this year. So there are some areas where we're succeeding. I just wanted to point out the aquaculture is a challenge. Just becomes maybe just a business
It doesn't
model.
matter how many loans we have if you don't have aquaculture ag land for new farmers.
Yeah, well, that's something we can work on for sure. Thank you.
Yeah. Dean, so, we've given the goal, and you're talking about
Yeah.
coming up with the plan.
Yeah.
As far as 30% local food by 2030, right? 50% by 2050. All right, so it's 2026 now. Where are we now in terms of reaching that goal? And it's number one. Number two is, what are the resources that you guys need to actually reach that goal? We got 4 years away from 30%. Where are we now?
Unfortunately, we still don't have the data. We only have a few people.
Wait a minute, you don't have a clue where we are in terms of the percentage of local food?
We can provide stats on it. I don't know how reliable the data actually is. When I look at it, doesn't seem to be that accurate as far as producing the thing. So it was like without the baseline, we cannot figure out how much we're actually going to be to double local food production.
So you don't know where we are now?
Correct.
Yeah.
You have a question?
I do, I have another thing, but I'm just following, I can't believe it. You gotta know where you're going, and if you don't have a baseline, how you can even do that? So
And we
all
put
these
that in-
years, you didn't get a baseline, all these years, you're not. Oh,
Yeah.
okay, well, let me ask a
Well,
question.
some of that might be above his pay grade. He has a boss that's not here that really should be
Yeah.
answering his questions.
So let me go back to contracts, and I'm looking at this because I'm really a stickler about watching how we spend our money and the taxpayers' dollars. And sometimes we put things in that is nice to have, but we don't really need. Well, people, go starving, can't pay bills. So here you have a contract, AGR 171, $200,000, University of Hawaii, to increase consumption of Hawaii fruits and vegetables to promote nutrition. So, and that was, and the report was due on 3/31/2025. There's $240,000 left on this contract. Final report came in. So did we increase the consumption of fruits and vegetables? We had to spend $200,000 or $160,000 to tell people they should eat more fruits and vegetables? Is that a good use of our money? For the taxpayers' monies?
Was that? Yeah, I think we can get back to you on what the actual report actually said on that.
But think about it. In a time, I mean, even in good times, should we just be, government just be spending money to spend and give contracts out? I mean, increasing the people, I don't know how you did it. Did you just put ads in the paper or did you put TV commercials telling people to eat their fruits and vegetables?
I'm not sure.
Even if you have to have a choice.
Dollars.
Senator, we'll get back to you with that information.
But even the information is one thing. I want to know, what's the policy? What's the plan? I mean, you just spend money, or should we look at this stuff and say, you know, this doesn't make sense, or why are we spending this kind of money? I mean, I'm gonna take this $200,000 and give people money to go buy food, go buy vegetables, you know?
So regarding doubling the food production, there is multiple. Oh, what are you talking?
Implementation.
$1,000 to increase consumption of Hawaii fruits and vegetables. And this is to the University of Hawaii. I don't know, what, did they come up with some idea that's gonna make people eat more vegetables and fruits?
We will definitely get back to you on that, and I'll go ahead and get that information to you.
You guys are missing my point. My point is, before you even dish out the money from the people hard-earned dollars, make sure that these are reports and studies that is gonna make a dent and do something, and not we just pay them out.
I hear you.
There's no return on investment. What? I mean, I don't know. I gotta beat up my kid to eat his fruits and vegetables. You know, every day, eat your fruits and vegetables. $200,000 to do that?
The problem is.
Cedric, you were going to say something about doubling the local food production.
Yes, there is multiple statutes that require for the doubling of food production. One of it is within state government in terms of the university, DOE, and all of those things. So a lot of the challenges on that part has been the procurement issue. One of the solutions DAB has brought to the table is that we could be potentially the escrow or pass through for the farmers to be able to sell directly to DAB to get the food into our state systems. And that's something that we're proposing this year. And regarding land for Department of Ag, one of our big asks this year for the CIP side is the 15 million to open up 150 acres in Kunia. That's a proposal that would potentially allow for 24 or more acres from parcels, 5 to 8 acres each. That would allow for these large scale operations, which Deputy mentioned earlier is the way forward in terms of getting to that benchmark of doubling the food production. And so I think what it might have been misconstrued was that Deputy was explaining in terms of the investment for opening these properties up. That's what DAB needs to be able to start the construction process, to start the infrastructure that is needed to be able to put these lands into production for ag. And I think that's the big request we have this year in challenging ourselves to create more access to land. And then on the ag loans part, we do have that request to increase our ceiling from 5 million to 15 million to be able to issue out capital for farmers that are struggling and new farmers that want to get involved into that industry. I think with the combination of those things, we can reach the goals that we're setting out for. And I hear the need to be proactive. And in regards to the hiring process, there has been the rapid hiring proposals that our ASO has been putting together. We have been putting in 80, 90 hires to fill these vacancies to get our department to be able to be more functional. And Operation Hire Hawaii has also been helpful in securing these positions as well. So there is efforts going into getting us to where we need to be. It has been slower than we wanted to. But as Deputy mentioned as well, DHERD is a part of that discussion in terms of the minimal qualifications. But internally, we also have been working on a reorg to restructure the department from inside so that it flows better and that it's more strategic in how we approach the services we provide. The Ag Liaison is a perfect example to be able to ensure that when farmers are and interested parties are coming to the department, we have a person that can deal with them directly and educate them to the fullest extent possible so they can make the best informed decision whether to get into industry.
But these are all thoughts. Where's the action to show you're moving in that direction?
We need to know the percentage, okay?
Correct.
We set this into stone, so 30%, it's 2026. Let us know what the percentage is now so we know how real this is.
I believe we have a report. I just can't locate it right now, but I'll get
Thank
you
you.
back that
Okay.
information.
Do you work with the, I'm sorry.
Okay, with regards to Upolu Road, North Kohala, you're responsible for the new project that we started from 2016, when during my my district, we created at the water project to open up farms in North Kohala on our lands managed by you folks, and with the help of Cardi Chang and DLNR, because it was a project that we needed to actually look for the water system, which we got. And we did get free water system from the feds. Until today, I think it cost us $10 million that WAM and our legislature here in the Senate provided. We got the completion. We did everything without you folks. But so when we had to, from the USGS well that we had, you folks had to sign on because you were the managing agency. DLNR helped us with the engineering part. So we got the monies, we put the water system in, we gave you guys the project, and we said, all you got to do is provide egg lots. And that's what the motivation for the creation for North Kohala to expand our ag industry, because the farmers were already waiting, because you all know that the Kohala ditch fell.
Yeah.
And so here the farmers were all ready, they were happy, they saw activity going, we got the infrastructure paid for. And then it's sitting there until today. We're saying, we talked to the chair, it's in your hands. All you guys had to do was either re-subdivide the area to parcel the land areas, create 5-acre lots, 20-acre lots, and there's the windmill farm down the street. There's some egg farms already there, and they're all waiting to connect to the water system. And we all know we don't provide, we don't manage water in our agencies. And they're waiting, a group is waiting to create the co-op to manage the water so that they can have the activities. But we haven't heard anything. But we got the water tanks. We got 2 water tanks already that we provided. It's kind of sitting there. So what's happening to that project? And here you're trying to create ag farms, ag lots somewhere. I'm glad you're doing something on Oahu, but here we're sitting down waiting, and exactly what the chair is saying, where's our farm ag lots? Because the last time we did farm ag lots was probably back in the 70s or the 80s. We have not done any ag lots, farm ag lots from DOA. And that's what the chair is banking on. Where are we going with these areas to create ag lots so that the farmers out there could say, hey, we can, let's apply for this ag lots that's available. We know that you can create large ag farm lots. Nobody wants 100 acres. But just as an example, we decided we're going to create ag lots for farmers. And we went out, we got the money, we got the engineering done, and Cardi did his job. We got water systems going, and then we gave it to you.
Okay, you guys should follow up.
Yeah, it's sitting there.
Oh, wait, you have a question?
Franco, Department of Agriculture, Water and Land.
And thanks for sticking out because you got some historical background.
No,
It's been wonderful working with you.
thank you. The water system, I haven't received the report for.
Name, please.
Brian County Department of Agriculture, Water and Land. From DLNR. I do not believe the system has been turned over to us yet. Last I saw, there was a 2026, I want to say early summer completion date for the turnover.
But what about the
completion.
subdivision and CPRing? on land?
I'm not familiar with that at this
Because
point,
even
but I
if
will
the
look
water
into it.
system doesn't get turned over right now, you still can do the part she's talking about.
Yeah.
Making sure that you can issue awards for lots.
It's where the dairy was. So the dairy on the bottom, you know, that dairy and that parcel where USGS had all those wells that they developed in the 80s after the plantation closed. We were lucky because USGS says they will give government without payment for any USGS wells that's sitting there. So when we did the final study that we gave you guys a copy, we paid for the study and there's lots, and Tim knows, lots of water in North Kohala. And we identified all these and we found USGS wells around. But anyway, you guys already got, and it was signed by your previous director, the transfer, and I think we did it by bill too, because we had to transfer from DLNR to DOA. And you already got the land and the project because DOA had to sign the commitment letter to accept the USGS wells.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you know that.
Yeah.
Okay, so Cedric, I think her point though is you guys are asking for more money for new lots, which everyone is supportive of, but you didn't finish the old ones.
And this is something that we were hoping to create for our people, yeah.
How long does that take
Blocks.
realistically? Last thing I seen was that the construction was still underway as of last year. So as Brian said.
Okay, but you know, DHHL, they give away paper leases like it's, free. So why aren't you guys at least doing that part where you're asking people who are interested so that you can award leases?
So the department does have a list of interested farmers, and we do make those offers to those farmers on the list. So we can put the request out.
Do you guys subdivide or CPR?
That would be a Brian question.
Yeah, I'd have to look into the property that was transferred, and I will
You guys
get back.
back.
Yeah, I will.
In the meantime, if you
Slept on it when the administration came on, because everything was done. You had the contracts and we paid for the last contract to develop the 2 water tanks. And on my understanding, the water tanks, Tim, can you go, that's in your district now, Tim. The water tank's supposed to be done already. So, and then you got water. Everybody's waiting.
Yeah, no, I'll definitely.
Last thing I would say on that is, Senator, one of the things I'm encouraging as senators and legislators is if you have interested folks that want to get on those properties, that they should
Can you make sure
reach out to
find out where
Department of
that
Ag.
first?
Yeah.
And then because once you guys are subdividing it or CPRing it, then they can announce, hey, these proposed, you can respond to the RFP or.
Excuse me, there were committee meetings, and I think, Brian, we had representatives from your agencies. We had community meetings, all of the projects that we already had planned. Every time that we had something completed so that we could prepare it for the communities. And we had hearings, we had meetings, and we had lots of people there waiting to see they want to sign up. I mean, and it's documented. So.
So there's interest.
Oh, yes, absolutely. All we need to do is for you to decide now to form a co-op. Because again, like we say, you don't manage water system. So the plan at that time was to get the interest. And there were some people already offering to create this co-op because we're saying whoever needs to apply for a farm lot, they gotta pay the infrastructure because we already created the major infrastructure. So if a farmer, so all you gotta do is re-subdivide those that lots, create this, go out to the community, sees who's applying to create this co-op. So the co-op manages the water system, yeah, and with the farmers, so when you already have your plot plan, 5 acres, 10 acres, you have your applications, they want the water system, then they gotta apply to the co-op, and then the managing of the water system infrastructure policy and the plans, they gotta pay for it. And people, I mean, they're all waiting.
Yeah. And
Got
then
it.
that,
Noted.
that makes sense for ag loan, because if the farmer needs the loan to connect to the water system.
Makes sense.
So-
Thank you for sharing your thoughts on that.
Yeah. Do you have any idea of what percentage of local agriculture meets the needs of the local communities, including our schools and universities?
Not at the moment. We can get that information back to you, Senator.
We try.
Yeah, I'm just saying that, you know, we should be spending money outside the community if you guys can provide, I mean, outside the state if you guys can provide it. But I don't know that you're working with that.
I mean,
That's why the regional kitchen thing creates a lot more
Exactly.
order and a system. Right now, it's just whatever. So we gotta figure out how do we formalize this and then compound the positive effects to benefit all of Hawaii.
So speaking of regional kitchens, how much are you guys involved in that?
Yeah. Well, Carol has been involved. She's attended the meetings, and that's why the biosecurity is so important. Because as you scale up crops and different commodities, you want to make sure that it's going to be safe. But then we got to work with Department of Ag on the commodity research, commodity regulation, and then that's when we start to really ramp up pork and beef, Dr. Maeda's shop has to get more involved. So they're all willing, but so this is really
Well,
like managing.
What I'm getting at is like, when are we going to get them to be working together so we can get the data, and how soon is that going to take us so that we can provide the needs for our community and public school and institutions?
Take that question. As Deputy mentioned, our statistician just retired, and so that's why we are lacking that information right now.
Yeah,
But
you don't need that information right now because ADC and CTAR, they're doing commodity mapping.
correct.
With the commodity mapping, then we know which lands we need to acquire if we want to scale up certain commodities.
Yeah, and that's also the bill that we are hoping to get passed this
They're
year.
already doing it though. You need a bill for that.
Well, internally, Department of Ag is requesting for staff to be able to do research and things of that
We should
nature.
give you more staff when you got that many vacancies.
I hear you.
What are you talking about? You can't even fill the vacancies you got and you're going to ask for more people?
The bill is to replace some of the federal layoffs that happened in 2008, 2009.
Have
What
them apply for some of these other positions that you can't fill.
that's definitely an option.
I just have a question based on what Senator Inoue is talking about. You have this Royal Kunia Ag Park that you're developing. Do you have a plan? Is it connected to water? Is the 15 million, what is it paying for?
Yeah, the project is shovel ready. Right now, we're asking for the 15 million to start developing the lots. The permanent water is coming up by the end of 2026. So as we start this project, everything should line up perfectly. Temporary water is
How many
being run.
total acres?
It's 150 acres and it's 24 new lots.
Yeah. And how much
So-
was the initial land purchase
I think it was donated to the state.
from Campbell?
Yeah, I think it was Haseko for them to get the zoning to put in the housing, they agreed to provide this 150 acres to the state.
Okay,
So
so
lands is under you folks now. It's under.
Yeah, it's under that. Yeah, but we just,
no, isn't it DLNR? And then it's managed.
right, it's managed by us, right?
So they don't.
Because we cannot own,
they
we
can't
cannot
own
physically
land.
own
The
land,
law
yeah.
doesn't allow them
Yeah.
to own land.
Yeah, but it's under our control.
So you have water. You don't have to have additional money for
No, the
water.
15 million is
It's all-
part of infrastructure.
Yeah, it's just
It's everything.
infrastructure, the developer will
No,
bring the
it's
water.
Land.
It's just raw land,
And
yeah.
so they would need the money for infrastructure, internal roads, all
Yeah,
that kind
and
of
that type of
fence.
thing, yeah.
That was already an ag designation though.
Yeah, it's already under.
Not
ag, yeah.
housing
Well,
or-
see, that's,
No, yeah.
but
yeah.
that's my point
Yeah.
with the new farmer. That even if the new farmer is able to buy land, they don't have $15 million to go put in roads
Exactly.
and water. So
Exactly.
there's no way. In order for us to expand ag, the state has to provide more ag leases. Because if not, how, I don't get
That's
it.
right.
That's what. But Department of Ag, going back to Senator Noy's comment, has not come forward to us saying, these are critical land assets that we need to protect agriculture. I've not heard that.
Yeah, I think it's been a pretty sporty conversation right now. More than anything else, what I'm hearing my colleagues say and what I'm wanting, and we talked about this last year, is we need a plan. What's the roadmap? How are we going to get there? As Chair has pointed out, the funding that comes from us. But if we don't have a roadmap, there's no reason to fund anything, because if it's just haphazard, we're not going to get anything. And, you know, Deputy, I know you're here, and Cedric, I know you're here to take this, but this is the time to talk about it because it's going to be a hard financial year. So let's get after it. Let's get a good plan before us.
Okay, yeah, we will do it. We'll get the plan.
Also, I think the plan should include executing pending projects and not necessarily introducing new projects, right? So please map that out on what that looks like. Deadline, maybe if we can trim the fat in some areas, that would be good also. But execution of pending projects is critical at this time. So,
Yeah, we can get you that information too.
Department of Ag have a reorg last.
I think animal, did you
what-
just finish one?
What year is that?
But it has never been like a overall on the
Yeah.
whole department.
Because this is really a Department of Ag under pineapple and sugar.
Yeah. I agree.
And so
I
why
think,
have, we don't have sugar. We only have Dole left, and you know, it's actually kind of a miracle that they're still here because Del Monte left.
right.
So when is Department of Ag going to reorganize for the type of ag that matches the goals that Senator Gabbard talked about?
Yeah, and I think it also has to include ADC, and I think everybody has to get together because then we can figure out all the pieces and who should be
But
where.
there hasn't been a
Yeah.
review of Department of Ag statutes to modernize it for all the things that we're talking about. It was based on pineapple and sugar lots.
Yeah. And I agree that the department never had much of a role because it always, the industry led it, right? You know what I mean? The department was on the side with just the diversified ag, which was much smaller. So yes, I agree. It needs a total overhaul to meet the needs of today's.
In your plan, you should actually include how you have to restructure your department to meet the plan, because otherwise we'll have all the vacancies again. So you really need to look at how do we plan, not only plan, but execute on the plan.
And Chair, and I think what needs to happen is not only looking at where we're going forward, but it doesn't seem like you know what we need? Go back to do a study right now, create that study of each island and where we have lands under your jurisdiction. If it's state lands, what's the availability for each island, and to say we can create under these land areas already in the state's jurisdiction to start creating ag lots, you know, and take it from there. Then going future, you say, okay, we have these lands that already identified, there's water systems and all that, and start creating your ag lots. Like we had to do the Kohala project because nothing was happening. But, you know, I'm so happy that Chair gave me the opportunity to start doing the study. And then we found the water, and then we said, we're moving. And.
But some of that could have been
You know,
avoided though, because going back to what she started saying earlier, is if we were way more proactive at the beginning, we could have preserved the Kohala ditch.
Yep.
But because nobody was paying attention, all the sugar infrastructure is just gone. That was water distribution systems for ag. And so now
Yeah.
there's very little left. And so now we're having to start from scratch, which is way more expensive.
And it depends on your island's, the geography of your island structure, because we know that there's not many areas like Maui or some areas. I'm glad Kauai, we already started a couple of years ago acquiring all these lands. And that's the focus. But, like, we're farmers, we're flower growers, but our commodities, has been declining. And it's kind of sad that Hawaii has lost because of the, I guess, competition with Europe and other areas that's growing flowers and exporting. We got killed, but we need to make sure that we preserve the industry. I mean, people always say Hawaii's flowers are the best, but we lost from a $30 billion project back in the 80s. There were 18 anthurium growers, and we were one of them. Not me, but my husband. And you know what we're now? We only got one active anthurium because we lost the exporting with the competition of international markets.
Deputy, you'd mentioned working with the other agencies and departments. That's why we passed Act 239 last year, right? SB 1186. It only took us 3 years to get it passed in a reso, but the whole point is get all the agencies, the departments, the organizations working together for food security, right? So please work together with that and help make that happen, okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
Going back to Senator Noy's comment though, that's where we've been trying to push more ornamentals, at least in certain areas where it makes sense. So if you cannot grow food in volcanic area, you can grow flowers. And Hilo has it's a struggling economy. If we started to grow more ornamentals, Hilo Airport, lots of the transportation and cargo space is empty. We should be exporting out of Hilo, growing and exporting ornamentals out of Hilo instead of us keep importing, which only hurts biosecurity.
Right.
And that's why the late Senator DKI created USDA, we got PBARC up there. And because the future was Hawaii Island and East Hawaii side because of the abundance of the water systems. But, we're losing, so we gotta be a little more active.
Anyway, okay, any other questions? Go ahead.
I saw it mentioned, the director in front of our committee last session had mentioned we need 2 mobile labs in regards to CRB, so we'd be able to bring in biocontrol and rear it. I don't see requests for money. Is that coming?
No, Carol, I thought you guys had a lab project, a biosecurity lab, mobile. Yeah.
That's already happening?
Oh, wait, check on 4. I know they were working on it. I don't know what happened to it. You guys are trying to find a location, I remember last.
And ADC has provided a location. So the contract is going out to scope it and get the cost, but right now the cost of actual laboratory is now going as a type of a converted sea container. So now instead of costing like 50 million, you're talking about 1 or 2 million, and within a year's time.
Yeah.
And so
the timeline to get it going is when?
the timeline is as the contractor gets the amounts that we can add there and ask for.
Okay, so the land is in
The
the
land
process of
has
getting
been-
secured.
Yeah,
in
the land has
process. It's
been
not
pretty much
finalized, but it's in the process.
specified.
Okay,
But we need to have the engineers scope out the
and
cost.
how long is that?
We've given them 6 months to a
Oh, okay.
year.
And then you have the money for it, right, already?
We can
The
get
2
it through
million.
ours, yeah.
The biosecurity funds, yeah. Okay, so within a year?
Uh, yes.
Okay, make it happen in a year. I mean, because you're almost there, really. You got the land secured, which is a big deal.
Yeah, and it's a mobile
You know what
facility,
you
so
want.
it should
Yeah,
be in
you just
fact.
gotta.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and don't say yes just because you think that's what we want to hear.
No, it was.
Like
the
say yes
plan
because it's
is
a
because
realistic
There's a
deadline.
need, and the hardest part was to get the area that's specified for us, and we got that because of ADC.
Yeah.
You know what was really
it's gonna be fine.
disappointing is, with the hemp projects. When Senator Bunda was president and we were all here in the early 2000s, we did the first hemp project up at
Whitmore.
Whitmore. And we all were so happy we can create this new venture. And then all of a sudden, we had the project, we got the plans going, and I don't know what happened. It declined, and then now we're starting up again. But
No, yeah.
why does it take government?
But it's very frustrating, right? Because
It's
when
frustrating.
Andy Hashimoto was at CTAR, we talked about green tea, replacing sugar and pineapple. I don't know where that went. And then he talked about blueberries. And I don't know where that went. And then there was the hemp. And I don't know where that went. And so it's like we keep coming up with these ideas of how we're gonna replace sugar and pineapple, but it hasn't
There's no continuity.
matured.
I
We
think
got
that's
CTAR, and CTAR, I've been trying to make sure that we create the project that CTAR has on Big Island in Hilo. So we got monies, we're saying, okay, we got all these acres, we gotta get back to CTAR from the University of Hawaii on the ag programs, make sure we're viable again. But then all of a sudden, I got money, we got rid of the old buildings were falling down. And that's still the same area that we're using them for the, all the diseases that is happening in the industry. We had the projects headquartered there, and then all of a sudden now we have a new disease, we gotta go put it in Oahu, and so we're trying to create areas. And they got lands at Volcano, and I was sharing with the chair, I said, Volcano and CTAR, all of those test plants that they're growing, my God, what did I tell you that I was surprised to see we're growing either onions or something that we don't have here in Hawaii, and it's blooming, it's growing, and so where are we?
Yeah, how do you take the research to commercialization? So that's we've had a hard time. CTAR does lots of research, PBARC does research, but we don't
hard.
commercialize.
So we're
we
not
gotta-
working,
we
we're
gotta-
not in sync.
Yeah, something's off. Then you can come in
Okay,
there.
moving along.
Anyway, any other questions? Okay, we're gonna adjourn and then we'll reconvene at noon for judiciary. Okay, calling to order the Joint Committee on Judiciary and Ways and Means. Today we're here from the Judiciary who will present their supplemental budget. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chair.
Yeah.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Chair Dela Cruz, Vice Chair Moriwaki, Chair Rhodes, Vice Chair Gabbard, committee members. My name is Brandon Kimura, Administrative Director of the Courts. With me today are Dalen Heather, Deputy Administrative Director of the Courts, court administrators across Oahu, and department directors and other pertinent judiciary personnel. Happy New Year, and thank you for having us and allowing us the opportunity to present an overview of the judiciary's supplemental budget requests. Very briefly, I will begin with the mission and a few highlight a few functions. As you're aware,
Let's go straight to table 6.
okay, we'll get to table 6. The next slide, this is an overall of our supplemental budget requests. Overall, we have 7 requests for approximately 6.44 million in general funds in FY27, conversion of 3 general funded positions to temporary to permanent, and a means of financing conversion of 1 from special fund to general funded. We certainly acknowledge the Economic uncertainty, we've carefully considered that in the context of things as we've reviewed and scrutinized our request internally, and we respectfully make these requests with that in mind, and the underlying important circumstances for each of these requests that I'll go through in the next 2 slides. Our first request is for $3.25 million in funding for supplemental armed security. In dollars, this is more than half of our supplemental request and is a hopefully temporary shift in our approach to provide physical safety to all who enter our facilities. We believe this is necessary and critically important under the circumstances, acknowledging the amount.
Okay, so is it, oh, okay, it's private security.
Yes.
So you don't work with DLE at all? This is, you're doing your own security now, is that?
We
In the courtroom,
this is to
the entrance.
protect the perimeter of our facilities.
Outside or inside?
Inside the perimeter. We do continue to work with DLE, and we have for decades. But the fact is that in recent years, in particular, they've been unable to provide the number of personnel on site, try as they might. And that has left us with facilities that we believe are not as safe as they could and should be for the tens of thousands of Hawaii residents that we require to be in our courthouses every year.
So how many are you folks lacking? Because according to DLE, they're saying that the court system is all staffed up. So you're saying that they're not able to, DLE is not able to provide the sheriffs for the court system, but on their end, they're saying everything is staffed up. So how many officers are you short? Or maybe should I say, how many positions does this 3.25 cover?
Thank you, Senator. Two different answers, but I'll answer both in succession. So in terms of how many they are short, it is at least 2, possibly more dozen, of the number of bodies that we need on site every day that we are short.
2 per courthouse?
2 dozen or more short.
Total.
Statewide. I can provide more specific numbers, but it's
230.
It's in that ballpark of.
That's from outside, right? You're talking about downstairs,
Inside.
outside of the courtroom, not in the courtroom, right?
These are what we call patrol deputies.
Yeah.
There are 2 different kinds of deputies that are in our courthouse. One are the patrol divisions that staff the front doors and throughout the buildings. And when there are high profile cases, they go in the courtroom or things like that throughout the building. The second type of deputy that we have are the custody or cell block deputies. And we do not personally keep as much track of those deputies because that is, we defer even more so to DLE because we know they're in the best position to determine how many they need and whether they have enough or not, because those are accompanying the bodies, whether it's in the cell block and up and down the building and back to the cell block. So we keep less track of that. The bodies I'm talking about today are exclusively the patrol deputies. And for that, statewide, we are at a minimum 2 dozen short statewide, probably quite a bit more. That said, to the second part of your question, Senator, the number of bodies that this would provide is roughly 18. And this would be armed private security. And so we consider this to be supplemental. It's not in lieu of. We appreciate all that DLE can provide and does provide. We're not looking to replace them. We wish they would be at our buildings. But the fact is that we just need more bodies. And in particular around the perimeter, as we've been discussing a little bit, we have had the front door of our primary courthouse on Maui without an armed deputy or personnel for multiple years. And
So follow up, Chair. So the reason that I ask is because if there is going to be funds that's going to be allocated to patrol these areas, I don't see why we wouldn't just give that over to DOLE so we can staff up on the state side. And maybe it's only temporary, so we don't know how long this threat is going to last, because according to your slide, and I apologize, I don't know what number slide this is, but there has been an increase from 2024 to 2025 from 69 to 140 threats. Threats or inappropriate communication. So what level of threats are we talking about that we're going to be, that the request is coming at 3.25 $2.5 million. So
Sure. This is, and I'll just put on the slide deck so that everyone can see what the slide that Senator is referring to. This is the last slide that I was only going to show if we needed to. We're talking about two slightly different things. They're obviously very closely related. So this slide shows the threats or inappropriate communications towards judges, probation officers, or other judiciary employees. So this includes separate threats that we receive electronically to judges or via email. Some of them include things in the buildings and the counters. This slide is partly to indicate that we do receive direct communications that are targeted at our judiciary folks, which is.
Just to add, so this is statewide then?
This is statewide. This is statewide.
One particular island or whatever. So
Correct.
this is statewide papers.
but listen, you're preaching to the choir as far as people getting threats over here. So
Yes. Yes.
okay, just wanted to.
So this is very closely related, but slightly different from the request here, which is focused on the perimeter of facilities in the building. The slide includes things that would happen outside the building, or judges' homes or things like that. So we're not seeking that as part of our budget request. That's just to underscore the level of threats and the level of danger that we're facing. In terms of things that are more directly related to our budget request in the 3.25, we have had significant incidents at our facilities. I'll just rattle off just a few. A couple of years ago, we had someone who came to our check-in, came to our courthouse front door with a ghost gun. And it took about 4 minutes for a DLE deputy to arrive. We've had folks, we've seen from our window in Kona, a long gun outside, someone walking around with that. And fortunately, it turned out to be a toy long gun. We've had folks call and talk about a mass shooting at our courthouse. Folks disrupt the screening station with a pit bull, showing up with BB guns, firearms, and brass knuckles and other things. So those are the things that are more directly related to our request for armed private security at the perimeter.
And I would just like to add to my final point that the request is justifiable, but if there is money that is going to be allocated, I'd much rather keep it in the state and keep our people continuing to work. So that was my only pitch, but thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
I have just a comment to add. It has nothing to do with threats, but I'd like to speak
Although
on.
she has been threatened.
We all have. Yeah.
She's even been picketed.
Mama Kia twice. Okay. And whatever. And the notices came from the Attorney General, so they knew something was going on and I didn't. Nonetheless, back to Big Island. And I shared this earlier with DLE with regards to the continual shuffling of the felons from Kona after court cases being driven down by our sheriffs into the Hilo Center. Now, we all know we completed the new building, but even with the 23 new additionals, it's still overcrowded. So just to add that, when are we going to start creating housing to take care of the Kona cases instead of having them driven over by our sheriffs to Hilo? And we're already overcrowded until today. And I think I'd like to say that to me, it's again, our overtime is increasing, but can't help. And and I'm not sure what the staffing is at this point. So with regard, and I think when we all worked on having our new courthouse, we should have built the facilities on the ground level, to take care of that. The transferring of those new felons or whoever has a court case has increased. And with the overcrowding in the Hilo facility, still, it's just, I give our staff in the Hilo facilities credit, because with the overflow of the additional Kona folks, I don't know if they're sleeping 2 or 3 people in a room, but nonetheless, and I don't see it as like next year, we'll try to address it, find a facility. to build and take care of the Kona instead of transferring them to East Hawaii.
Understandable. Thank you, Senator. I appreciate the question, and I personally agree with the concern. It's significant cost and danger and all those other things. We've engaged with Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation a number of times over the years as they've expressed interest in adding a facility to the Kona side of the island, and we've been happy to be at the table and talk with them about it. But in terms of the location and planning and the size of the facility and the types of things, well, it'll be, but we also defer to DCR in terms of that, because they house the individuals for those kinds of things. But we're happy to engage in the communication with them.
And it's already built. It's a beautiful building. We all went, and I'm sure you guys are proud of our Kona facility. Is there still, if we need to locate a place, and we know infrastructure is the worst for building, the cost is real high in Kona because it's all rocks, blue rocks that you have to, metal through to create infrastructure. Water systems are lacking. Is there a possibility of looking at the current courthouse on a lower level or whatever? Probably would be cheaper to add something connected to the courthouse rather than looking into a whole new building somewhere. I see my friend, Judge Kim. Welcome back.
We do have,
Nonetheless, and I know they've been struggling as well.
yeah, understandable, Senator. We have, discussed things like that with DCR. I think in our judiciary complex, it would be, respectfully, I don't think we have the space or I think it would be complicated in terms of the danger and the custody. But I do, of course, understand the concern. And I know that DCR has been looking at spaces that are either adjacent to or near the courthouse. There's also that mall that's across that street, so that at least would not be digging up lava rocks, and there are other, commercial spaces in the area. But we defer to DCR in terms of those kinds of things.
Okay, all right. I just feel, we have to understand the Big Island is the future of the state. And geographically, from east to west and west to east, it's lots of travel. So it continues, but hopefully we can somehow create something. Even buying an old building or something, near the Kona police station, maybe adjacent with the county's police station. But I know it's gonna cost money. And I know that I've been fighting for the Koha West. WAM-AEN courthouse.
There you go.
Next project.
We'll get to that.
Good.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Senator.
About that.
Senator Kidan.
Thanks.
I just wanted to know that graph, how many are from the same, are they all different instances, but from same people?
These are different instances. So this counts the number of events. Certainly a number of them are from the same individual over and over and over again, and I can get that information to you. In 2025 in particular, a number of those were from 3 individuals in particular, but it was still 2025 as a calendar year was still a significant increase over 2024.
So pretty current. 2024 to have threats.
Yeah, so this chart shows a kind of a year over year. And these are, again, more targeted threats that were essentially individualized to, a judge or probation officer or, a counter employee or something like that. So
I remember there was one incident at Kona courthouse once recently, a couple of years ago.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, you only did 1 out of 7, and that took 20 minutes.
Okay. Thank you, Senators. Just one last comment as I move to the next to Senator DeCourt's comment. We would be very happy if DLE received the funding, and we've always been supportive of them as well. It's just they can't bring the bodies, and at this point we need live bodies. Second request relates to cybersecurity, and this is to redescribe 2 positions that will work on cybersecurity across the state. We have faced significant cybersecurity threats, I'm sure, as has the executive branch and other parts of the justice system and really every part of society. Other jurisdictions have faced threats and have had to shut down their court systems. We've seen things in Pennsylvania and Florida and Georgia and Missouri and Mississippi and Colorado and Ohio, and many other jurisdictions that have closed things down because of attacks. Since December 1, in the last 40 or so days, we've had nearly 500,000 high-risk security events on our judiciary cyber systems. About 42,000 were classified as critical and actively blocked, meaning that if they had gotten through, they could have caused a compromise. So this is a significant area, and we appreciate consideration of two additional funding to redescribe two additional to this modern
This is
priority.
related to the other, the
Deletion of that position at the bottom.
Yes, it would be general funds for two of the positions, and for one of the two, we would request a conversion from a special to a general.
because you have them both number 3, yeah? Priority.
Correct. That's
So those two are connected.
yes. If you're looking at table 6,
Yeah.
it's that one and the one at the very bottom.
So the third one and the last one are
Correct.
So you're asking for additional 188,000?
Yes, that is the dollar amount is in general funds for the two positions.
So they're gonna delete a special fund position to add a general fund position.
Correct.
Okay.
The next request is to restore funding for POS contracts for substance use treatment for adult probationers on Oahu. This amount is the remaining amount to bring us back up to pre-COVID levels. At the early portion of COVID, the funding was significantly reduced, and we're now at a tipping point where we cannot, it's unsustainable to continue at this level. Treatment of the individuals is significantly increasing and necessary, and the lack of funding has caused instability when these probationers need the stability. And so that because of the lack of funding and the delays, folks have ended up having infractions before they could even begin their treatment because of the delays. So it's impacted the individuals, their prospects going forward, and certainly the community.
Yeah, go ahead.
On that one, so what does a judge do in that situation? Do they don't look at the budget before they say, okay, you should go to drug rehab. They just order it, right?
They order the treatment, but then it's between the probationer and our probation officer to ensure that they get into the treatment and that they get the right assessment and the right programming.
Okay, so it's already been ordered. It's just whether we provide it or not.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Yep.
Okay, next.
The fourth request is to restore funding for the Office of Public Guardian's sole staff position on Kauai. Kauai is literally without a staff position for this critical office. And so recently, a guardian from Maui has been flying over to address the Kauai cases. Before that, it was guardians from Oahu and the Big Island, but it's not sustainable to leave the island without an on-island guardian.
How many cases do you have in Kauai?
On Kauai, I believe it's smaller than the other islands, understandably. We have approximately 15 or so cases on Kauai currently. And the reason it sort of strains the office is because for each of our guardians across the state, they're averaging about 90 cases, whereas a reasonable caseload per guardian is more like 50 to 60. So when they need to fly over to Kauai to take care of those cases, then it's not only impacting the Kauai cases that may not be getting the timely attention, but it's impacting their cases back home on their home island.
So you have a full-time person on Kauai?
Currently, we have nobody on Kauai. So this
part-time
request would be for a part-time position. Yeah, so that the salary amount reflects a part-time position.
So this is a part-time position.
Correct. Just 3 more requests. The 5th request is to implement the recommendations of the Commission on Salaries, since that's required by law at this point. The 6th request is to restore funding and convert a temporary to permanent for a court ops specialist in Kona. The court ops specialists are sort of utility positions that can be moved around in terms of their functions and responsibilities, which is especially helpful on a neighbor island. At this point, in Kona, this court op specialist would be focused on fiscal matters. And as the needs have been increasing in court interpreter or requests for court interpreters, this person would help out with the logistics of scheduling the court interpreters.
Kona or Hilo?
This would be Kona.
Table 6. Are we still on table
Yeah.
6? But
Yeah.
you have it in.
No, his order is slightly different.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
On table 6,
You said.
the commission on salaries is number 1.
Yeah.
This one is number 6.
Yes, on table 6, commission on salaries is number 1 because that's already required by law. We've organized the PowerPoint a little bit differently to sort of group them by categories. So the first slide were 2 related to security, 2 related to services to court users, and then these last 3 are more staffing related.
Yeah.
So that's
The one I'm looking at says Hilo for the court operations specialist for funding from temporary to permanent. But
Oh, it does say Hilo.
yeah, it says
Oh.
up there and you got Kona up there. Not that we're rivals, but we all give our island, but make sure we're on the right city.
apologies for the confusion. We will believe it's Kona. Kona is, yes, it's for Kona.
Okay.
Apologies for the confusion on the tables.
This is restore funding for temp to perm court operations specialist, right?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, it says Hilo on.
It says Hilo.
Apologies for that.
Okay, next.
And the last is a no-cost conversion of temp to perm for 2 positions in our court-appointed special advocate program on Oahu. And these are the folks that work with youth and families who really need the stability of full-time positions. They are vulnerable children in foster care, and temporary positions, although they create higher turnover regardless of what job type, that's especially necessary to have the stability in this area. So that's our 7th and final request on the operating side.
You guys got quite a bit of vacancies though.
Thank you, Senator. We have vacancies and we've been redescribing. I will say that since the vacancy report has been tendered to you folks, we've already filled more than 24, and our vacancy rate statewide, although we hope that it could be lower, is a little under 12%. And so we try very, very hard to work the positions and be creative about recruiting and retention, other things to keep our vacancies as low as possible. The next slide reflects our CIP requests. First is the, as Senator Noe was referring to, our highest priority CIP request, which is a new district court in South Kohala. This request is for 30 million in bond funds. The current facility has significant concerns for safety, space, and noise. You can hear lawnmowers. There are wooden jealousies that allow anyone to enter the space really if they needed to. There is no cell block. Defendants, when they're transported up to the facility, remain in a van and have to enter the facility one at a time. Their attorneys have to meet with them or speak with them through the van windows. So this is a facility that is in dire need of replacement and modernization.
So we gave you 4 million last year. Where is the status of that?
The 4 million was for the design, and we deeply appreciate that.
It's completed?
Design is in progress, and we are hopeful that with that in progress, that this can move forward, realizing the lapse dates as well for that money. And
So what is the timeline?
I think the timeline that we are looking at is to have the design completed, because those funds will lapse in June 2028. So that'll be completed well before then, in time for this. If we were so fortunate to receive the funding this year for construction, that this could go out to bid before these funds lapse as well. So
They would end up lapsing the same time.
yes.
That won't work though, yeah? The time constraint.
We're hopeful that we can complete both, or complete the design enough and get the construction funds encumbered.
When did the contract start for the design?
For the design, I'll have to get back
By
to you on
some
that.
point.
Yeah, it's
Take 3 years?
we're hopeful because of the pre-planning that we've done with DAGs that we can move this expeditiously from
Because
planning to
we
design.
The land. You know,
Yes.
so all we need is the building, right? The construction infrastructure.
Submit to us as a follow-up.
Yeah, you just want to make sure that because if you wait one
I
year, you
know.
get 3 years
Yeah.
Exactly.
for
Versus
construction.
you have to-
Versus if you do it this year, you're only going to get 2 years for construction.
Thank you. I have a question on your first circuit for the 15 million for the elevators.
Yes.
I know that's been in and out of your budget. So do you think this is the last time you think you'll need that? And then is this just only for basically the folks, the general public? Because I don't recall is there a separate elevator for the judges and staff at First Circuit? And does that cost cover that?
Thank you, Senator. We very, very much hope and trust that this is the last request for the elevators. We were hopeful that the last request was the final one. DAGS had recently informed us that that was insufficient and assures us that this amount, if we were so fortunate to secure it, would be the last amount for the elevators.
So what was the total amount?
The total amount so far has been approximately a little over 20 million. And so this is be another 15.
For just the elevator?
For just that was we have 9 elevators, 4 of which are public, 5 of which are private for judges, staff, 4 of which are private for judges and staff, and 1 of those is private for the custody. So that calculates the 9. But the 20+ million was for the elevators and then also for the precursor to that, which is to redo the fire alarms in the entire building, the 40-year-old building.
Almost the same cost as the new courthouse in South Korea.
Yes, I
Thank you.
appreciate that. Yes, yes.
Go ahead.
If we can move to table 22.
I have one on this, if you don't mind, we can finish up
Sure,
on
go
it.
ahead.
Okay. Yeah, so having to do with the elevators, it's not in the district I represent anymore, but it used to be when the saga started. So how many years has this taken now?
It's been over a decade of requesting funds and for most of that period, understandably not receiving it. But in recent years, it has been several years where we've had funds available. So the fire alarms, which had to be the precursor, are well underway.
So they're not finished yet?
Not finished yet.
What's the timeline for those being done?
That I will need to get back to you. I'm sorry.
Okay. And Chair does raise an interesting point. I guess the new district court in South Kohala does not have elevators, and that's why it's so
Correct.
cheap.
No need.
Okay.
We're leveled,
Is
like
it,
lots of space so we can create a real nice courthouse.
Correct.
Enough that our former CJ
But this is,
doesn't struggle coming out of the door, from the back door to the courthouse.
but the 15 million is something that went out to bid in a regular, I mean, was there more than one bid?
Excuse me, this 15 or
15 million
For the elevators.
for the elevators.
So the an amount went out to bid earlier for the elevators, and there was one bidder, and DAGS awarded the contract. And after a period of time, it came to light that they had made a mistake in their bid, and after between the contractor and DAGS, they de-scoped the project and took the elevators out of it and focused on the fire alarms. And then as DAGS explained to us as they're looking at how to complete the elevators, they reassessed the cost now that more time has passed and advised us that we would need 15 million more.
Okay, but I don't know what the correct procedure is, but did the elevator part of it go out again? Was it a sole source at that point? You'd already chosen the earlier one and you just had to stay with the earlier one?
At this point, we do not have anything out to bid for any of the elevators. So there's a credit, if you will, that DAGS has of about, I think, 12 or 14 million of funds that have been previously appropriated. And DAGS advises that will be sufficient for the.
But But you're locked into that. I mean, you're legally locked into that. You can't put it out for bid again and see if something's cheaper.
I think DAGS plans to put it out to bid in the spring. And that will, to your question earlier, cover, we hope, elevators 1 through 4, which are the 4 public elevators, and 9, which is the custody elevator.
Okay. Well, I think I'll probably be out of office before that actually happens, but I'll be glad to see that finished.
So, thank you, Senator. My understanding is that when they, DAGS de-scoped the elevator portion from the prior project to allow the contractor to focus on the alarms with the remaining, with a portion of the funds. Now DAGS is in the process of revising the bid documents to clarify that the next bid will be elevators, and I expect that bid to be in the spring.
Was it before the contract was awarded or after?
After the contract was awarded. We, as we understand it, the project was de-scoped last spring, and we in the judiciary learned about it in August, which is about the time we're putting our budget request together. At that time, the amount was 10 million.
I'm just trying to see why it takes so long to put out another bid, and we know it takes long, so.
Understood.
If they're gonna wait till the sprinklers, or what is it, the fire
Alarms.
alarms get done and then go out, there's gonna be another year and a half.
I share your frustration, Senator. Thank you.
Be going out, doing all the bid documents, be ready to go out to bid and start it, because that process takes a while,
Yeah,
right?
right.
So, but the clarification is you said that the guy that got the bid, right, the guy that got the bid, had a problem with the bid with the elevators, right? That's what you just said, right?
Yes.
Okay, this is the problem though. Same guy that doing the alarm is the same guy that put in for the elevators. So you guys took out the elevators, not you, but Dags took out the elevators and then did the fire alarms, right? So Dags never seen a problem with that. Still giving the guy the contract, right? But the guy would renege on the original bid because he realized, hey, it costs more now.
We can ask Dags.
Yeah,
They don't-
that's true. Yeah, that's ridiculous. I mean, not your
No,
fault.
I understand the frustration.
It's ridiculous because now the guy got the contract. Now he probably gonna be the only guy gonna put in the contract again, and he gonna get more now. He will get $5 million more than the original bid.
Yeah, I understand the frustration, Senator, and we certainly share in that. As it was explained to us, part of the challenge for DAGS is that there was a sole bidder. And so that sole bidder received the contract, and when that sole bidder, who is then holds the contract, had an issue with the contract, DAGS options were fewer. But I defer to DAGS in terms of explaining a little bit more granularly, but that's how we understand it.
Enough money to do that bid, but you took out the money, and that money that you took out is enough to do the elevators. How does that split?
The money that was, when they de-scoped it to take the elevators out, and there was money remaining that I guess DAGS refers to as a credit, that is now apparently not enough to do all 9 elevators.
No, it's enough to do 5.
To do 5.
Yeah.
So we believed, and that's
So
part
why
of
not
where.
just leave it in and do the 5?
So DAGS will put it out to bid, I expect in the next couple of months, to do the
Just
5.
leave money in the first contract and then just do the fire alarm and the 5.
Change order. You guys know change order, right? Everybody knows change order.
And it's just
Yeah.
from 9 to 5, but
It gets done.
Right. I mean, my understanding is there was an issue between the general who put in the bid and the sub who submitted to, or shared with the general the amount that they could do the elevators for.
that's a Department of Labor, yeah.
And you know what? That's a specialty group. There's hardly any.
Right.
And they'll charge you
Okay, that's different department, but.
elevator repair.
You had a question?
Yeah, table 22, please, positions that are authorized to telework. You folks currently have 43 telework workers.
One and three.
No, table 22.
Table 22, it's on page 66, 67, and 68 of
How many
the total.
do they have?
Total.
They have
Yeah,
3 pages.
Yeah, 3 pages, but it starts on
Yeah.
page 66. So table 22, you folks have 43 telework workers. And then I'm gonna kind of ask 3 questions all at the same time so you can respond all at the same time. So within those positions, 18 of those positions are social workers, which majority of them are on the road, so that's justifiable. However, court service workers are also wrapped in to that authorized telework workers. So how are you able to telework if your position is court services and you're not in the court? Then if you go down to page 65, also on the same table, table 22, one of the authorized telework workers is deputy department director. So, yeah, okay. So why is the deputy department director teleworking? Or any management position therefore? And are you folks transitioning these workers to come back in person? Because 43 is a lot. I'm assuming it's since COVID. But is there any plan to bring them back in, considering that we also do have vacancies as well? So.
Thank you, Senator. We, at this point, we take, I think, a careful eye for all of our telework assignments. We have a telework policy and agreement. In addition to that, we require that supervisors check in and talk with the teleworking employee at regular intervals and have them report into my office every quarter. In addition to that, anyone teleworking must be performing at their a requisite level. And if any performance issues, we can bring them back in immediately. And we have done that. So with that, these are folks that, again, with constant reviews, have deemed to be performing either at the same level, if not better than the level that they would be performing in the office.
Yeah. Is there a goal though to bring them back? So my concern, in addition to the court services position, is deputy department director. I'm assuming this is a pretty extensive management position. They should be in person.
The deputy department director position is in administration. I believe that may be, I don't want to misspeak, but it's in administration. We have 5 administrative departments. Let me grab just reference so I know which department we're talking about.
Here, judge. Yeah, me.
This is in our IT department. And so at this point, this person and all of the teleworkers, again, are performing. We do not have a plan to bring them back. Primarily, our teleworkers are 2 to 3 days. They're in the office quite a bit. We have a few who are higher than that, but again, are able to perform at the necessary level. So at this time, we do not plan to bring it back. We also believe that this opportunity for employees who continue to perform consistently at high levels to have the flexibility to telework is one of the things that helps us with our recruitment and retention, and in particular, the ability to keep our vacancies. Although, again, of course, we would much rather it be much lower, is at this point less than 12%. So.
Do you know and this wasn't on your report, so I'm asking, do you know how many of these 43 telework positions are part-time versus full-time?
They are primarily full-time, if not exclusively. I can check and get back to you, but it's primarily full-time.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Follow.
Yeah.
So following up on that, you have Judiciary 601, a special assistant to the administration director, up to 4 days. Teleworking, up to 4 days, 119,000 $712 is the salary. So what do they do if they're assistant, special assistant to the admin director?
Let me just check to make sure I'm thinking of the right person.
Page 67.
This person, in addition to being, or as part of them being special assistant, is our Chief Innovations Officer. And so a lot of their work, well, again, most of their work is done not only remotely from a judiciary facility, but remotely in terms of not in person with other judiciary employees. They do conduct most, if pretty much all of their business either by email or phone or Zoom meetings, because they're working on innovations to the judiciary primarily through technology, and in some other ways focusing on innovative or sort of specialized projects to help us move forward, whether it's a tech project or to streamline a particular operation or something like that. So that's this individual.
Two of them. You have two of them, special assistant to the administration director, and one is up to 4 days and one is up to 3 days.
Yes.
They're all both getting paid the same amount.
So the 4-day person I just spoke about, the 3-day person, the up to 3-day person, and again, these are up to 3 and 4. And so especially at that level, it is often the case that they do need to come in. They're authorized to be remote that amount, but they often do need to come in for in-person meetings or events or things like that.
We know that. How is that being monitored? It's just, and then you have a private secretary up to 2 days. It just seems like, everybody just want to work from home for two days out of the week. I mean, these are positions that have been traditionally, they're there to assist people in the office, and they're not around. So it's like, yeah, they might be functioning, but are they really there servicing the public and servicing what needs to be done?
Thank you, Senator. We believe they are performing at an exceptionally high level. And these 3 I know personally because they work directly with me and they're performing at an exceptionally high level. They're always
Exceptionally high level compared to what? Compared to prior to them being
just
hybrid or?
the job of the 3 that we're talking about requires exceptional performance in this office, and they're absolutely meeting expectations.
Said that about most of the position that they're exceeding and performing exceptionally high. So what is it compared to prior to COVID that they're doing this much compared to what they were doing before COVID?
I think compared to the expectations, compared to what we expect from them as an employee. Are they?
So did the expectations change? No.
No.
So they should have been performing at that same level then, right? So they're beyond the original level, if exceptionally high level?
They're continuing to perform at minimum at the same level. Correct.
So they're not at a especially high level. They're at their normal level.
I suppose it's normal for that position, but the position requires exceptional performance. But I mean, to your point, they're performing at the same level.
Other jobs are not expected to perform at any levels?
These 3 in particular, again, I can speak personally because they work in my office.
Because it seems to be that only a few are expected to perform above high levels, but everybody else can perform below levels? Do you see what I'm saying?
I understand what you're saying, and I'm misspeaking, but what I was initially trying to say in response to Senator DeCourt's question is that for everyone on this list, we have a policy and approach where each of them is reviewed on a regular basis by their supervisor, and they are meeting or exceeding expectations for that job and those functions. For the 3 that you're highlighting, I'm speaking more personally because I know and I am their supervisor. And so I know that not only are they meeting those expectations, but they are indeed performing at an exceptional level.
And somebody not meet, so you have to have them come back.
Yes. Institution-wide, we have had to pull people back.
How often does that happen? What's the percentage of
that I'm not sure, and I can get back to you, but that has occurred. So we do not put people on telework status and forget about them. They're constantly reviewed.
Can you share with the committee at a later date in writing, when you say they're reviewed consistently, what is that consistent? Is it across the board? They're reviewed once a month, twice a month, once a week?
I'll
once
share.
a year? Can you share that with us?
I will. Thank you.
So do these employees have free parking spaces? If they're not in the office, are we paying for parking spaces, or we could lease out their parking space?
They do not have free parking. I'll have to check on whether the telework status impacts their
It depends on the court,
part.
right?
Yeah, their
Where
ability
they're
to park.
located.
Depends where they're located.
You gotta pay, but in most rural areas,
Correct.
parking is provided.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I think it just depends.
Yeah, no, there's been this long running debate about telework versus being in there in person. And I have not, the personnel management is not an area of specialty for me at all. Are you aware of studies that have actually looked at whether people who are working remotely are any less efficient than those who are working in their office?
I think,
does it make any difference? Are they more efficient if they're at home? Are they less efficient if they're at home?
thank you, Senator. Most of the academic type studies that I've seen have indicated that they're having a hybrid approach, which is, again, where virtually all of ours are, is the sweet spot, if you will, and it allows folks to perform at their best.
Okay.
There are certainly many, many anecdotes that, are not consistent with that. But that's what we've seen, and, bring it back to the folks on this list. To us, this is critical in retention of employees.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
I think it depends though, right? Because some departments may not have a robust review program like you.
Mhm.
If you're saying your program
Right.
of review is that consistent. I think others, they have not shared with us their timeline or their system of review.
I think, Chair, that one of the questions that should be asked when departments request additional personnel is how many they have working from home.
No, it's, oh yeah, so we have that as all that, each department, for the members, there is a table on members on staff that's teleworking.
Yeah, and that brings up the question, because we know for a fact that teleworkers, and I'm not faulting them, when you work from home, you're not spending the required 8 hours that you normally do at work, focused and doing your work. So a lot of times the work can be done, like you said, at a high level. They can do it in 2-3 hours. They can go, to the doctor, or they can go grocery shopping, or they can, watch the kids. I don't know. I know people tell me that
Mhm.
they're able to do all of these functions. And I know people are nodding their heads, because that's reality. You're gonna wash your clothes, you're gonna make meals, you're gonna do your work. So if that's the case, that they could do that work in that shorter period of time, then are we having too many employees in the office, and that they're not, they're doing the same amount of work, but it's taking them 8 hours to do it?
But these are
Versus
questions we should also ask DHERT.
6 hours.
Or does it just mean that they don't do it 8 hours in a row, and there's 16 hours in a day basically where you don't sleep? So do they do that work in 8 hours, and they do all the other stuff that they would do? And I don't know. I don't know the answer, but
The people I talk to, they're not going to stay up to midnight and do.
The part that I think is missing though is when you're not there, you're not part of the conversation.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so that I feel like is where there is some loss.
Right. And with that,
If we had these meetings all telework, none of us would, we wouldn't chit chat in the hallway. We wouldn't, we
Right.
wouldn't discuss things the same way. So that part I feel from a team perspective and a communication and getting everybody on the same page, it seems like there is some loss.
You're just not engaged. A lot of times when you're working from home, got so many distractions.
You're on mute, so
Yeah. I do also acknowledge that there is exceptions. So for example, social workers, right? Most of them, they're on the road, they're visiting, like that's understandable, but there's no, yeah. But then there's no reason for court services. I mean, you have a planner, you have program specialists, you have deputy department director, you have DUI adjudicators. So I understand that there are exceptions, and if we don't have a goal to rebuild the in-person culture and make that the norm, then what I believe is that if we move forward with this kind of method, pretty soon everybody's going to want to telework, and then no need money for buildings, no need money for parking, no need money for budget, no need money for, yeah. So that is the point, is whether their work is coming out, etc. Okay. No elevators, because nobody's in them.
Yeah, thank you, Senator. At this point, nobody's in them because they're broken down.
True.
But I appreciate the question, and I appreciate Senator Kim's question. Most of the studies I've seen have indicated, if anything, that employees who are on the days that they are teleworking, and this is, again, academic and not related to the judiciary, work more than their 8 hours. And maybe because they are breaking it up with doing other things. Our judiciary policy, so bring it back to our judiciary policy, we explicitly exclude and prohibit, caretaking of kids or parents or other things.
Think 8-hour employees at your office work more than 8 hours. They take work home, and we take work home. So
That's
I mean, so that's standard, right? I mean, I don't know anybody who don't take, well, they could be, but people take work home. I mean, I take my computer from here to at home, and I'm on a computer in the middle of the night.
Well, now with the phone, you're always working. I mean,
So to say that, that they're doing more work than the people that's in the office, I don't know that I buy that.
Senator Richards.
Yeah, question, we're talking about the South Kohala Judiciary, the courthouse, and you asked for 3.25 million for security. Is some of that detailed for that South Kohala? Because I didn't realize how bad it was till we did that tour.
It is quite bad. Of the 3.25, we plan to have a portion of it for each circuit or each island. And so again, because it's supplemental and not instead of DLE deputies, we plan to be flexible and move them around. And so the short answer is yes, we anticipate them being at South Kohala. The longer answer is not all the time, because we don't anticipate them being at any of these facilities all the time, all day. We plan to move them around as needed where there are gaps in DLE's coverage.
Well, it's just the security standpoint where you have those windows that open right in, and I can see where there's a big concern on that.
Yeah.
And when I was there, I didn't see anybody actually looking around the building or watching that. Maybe you have cameras or something, but
that is an area that we absolutely want to beef up around that building. We've been keeping the windows closed, which is a start, so that people can't see when court is in session, which is, modest at best. But yes, understood.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Just on my concern is how much, all these guys that is teleworking. I mean, I notice I'm working here, but how much of these guys are new hires? How much of the teleworker guys are new hires? Because you're telling me that's a sweet spot for him to get the job. But if I was working 30 years in the position, all of a sudden you're allowing me to go. But when I got hired, that wasn't a sweet spot. You know what the sweet spot was? Everyone government job. That was a sweet spot.
Yep.
Are you saying that's the sweet spot? Then we got to figure out how we can change that, because again, like how Senator was saying, how are we going to get this? And then it was Senator De La Cruz said, how are you going to huddle up? Some of these guys, can I ask you a quick, are you teleworking?
No.
Okay, just checking. But again, confidentiality. Yeah, with some of these work happening over here. If I'm at the laundromat or they carrying my
Brandon
kid.
lives there.
Huh?
Brandon lives there.
Okay. So wouldn't you want everybody else to live semi? You live 16 hours, shouldn't they be living 8 hours?
That would be nice.
Same, because again, every department maybe doesn't have the oversight that you do, but this is an excuse. I'm not saying you have an excuse, but it's an excuse that's the reason why they're getting hired. They should get hired because of the pay. Some of these guys getting 100-something thousand. 100-something thousand. I run from Ever Beach to over here. I stay here and more than I stay here now. I mean, you see what I'm saying? That should be the incentive. If this guy's been working over a year or 2 years, when they got hired, that was the sweet spot. They're working for government, but they're going to have one job for 30 years. But you're telling me, that's their sweet spot. I get a hard time to understand that.
How
And
do
you gotta worry about the confidentiality of some of the work that they're doing. You know what I mean? I mean, that's just something that to look at because, there's pages of it. I mean, and not just your department, but a lot of the departments. And I know that Senator Kim's, pet peeve when it comes to teleworking, because there's, like she said, people watching their parents cooking dinner, getting their medication for their spouse.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I'm saying that your department's doing, I just say.
Okay, we have the AG waiting outside, and then anybody else have, go ahead.
Okay, and you can give this information to us. The first one though, first is, can you folks in the future, instead of putting the same thing for everybody and the purpose of their work, teleworking is employee able to perform assigned duties? Can you tell us what their assigned duties are so we can see it? Instead of giving us the standard statement for every single person, that doesn't help us at all to justify them doing this. Second, human resources, to me, that's a people kind of position. Yet you
Lots of them
have
are like
a
that.
lot of human resource specialists, and then you have the human resource resource manager. The manager should be managing these people, and yet they're on hybrid. I mean, they're up to 2-3 days out of the office. I don't know how you do human resources when you're not looking at the people or talking with them and then managing them from home.
Thank you, Senator. The human resources positions in particular, those are primarily in our administrative department. So they're not in a court facility. So in the administrative departments, they're essentially providing guidance to, other HR and other
But they
folks
should
throughout the
be
state.
looking and seeing the employees and understanding what's going on in the workplace. Anyway, you can get back to us in those.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay, I had a question about table 23. I noticed that on some of the travel, there's quite a bit that are state, which makes sense, but it also shows that the cost of some of these trips were paid by an other entity. So what's the process for you guys? Because I know at the legislature, we often check with ethics to determine if we can accept those trips by the other entity.
Thank you, Senator. Sometimes it is something that we need to check with ethics. It's often, I think probably more frequently, it's something that's part of a grant. And so when we apply for the grant and receive that funding, then it's already anticipated that we're going to use those funds for travel.
Okay.
That's the most common.
Okay, it's not delineated though. It just says other.
You should
Understood.
identify
Okay.
it.
Because how does that work? I know at previously there was I guess a difference of opinion that judges' ethics standards, they don't go to the ethics commission, but the staff go to the ethics commission.
Correct.
So that means some of these, the judges could take the trip, but they don't check with ethics.
I suppose correct. The two types of the judge travel. One, where it is something that, they should, presumably check with ethics, if you will. They would check with the Judicial Conduct Commission, which is the parallel to the State Ethics Commission.
Yeah, but all they do is they review it and then they have to submit it to the Supreme Court, who makes the final decision. So it's somewhat incestuous in how that works, but
for a significant dispute, it would, yes, the Conduct Commission's recommendation would go to the court. But for something at this, whether it would be appropriate to travel with funding from this entity, that would be advice from the Conduct Commission, I would think.
yeah. And who's on the commission?
I can get the members to
Yeah,
you,
well, who appoints the commission?
the court.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
who, like judges, and judges
Okay.
sit on it or lay people?
I believe generally no.
No.
The judges appoint them.
Yeah, but is it lay people then that are?
There is a mix of lay and attorneys, and I can get the names and certainly the requirements for the appointees.
Judges are the ones, some of them are on that committee. They gotta come before the judge.
Yeah, so that's why I don't quite understand how that works between the judges having I don't know who determined that they have their own ethics rules that don't follow the ethics commission.
Understood.
So I'm not sure how some of these, because now I guess ethics commission has gone, especially because there's a former judge on the ethics commission that says, even if it's a grant for us, that's a gift.
Mm.
And so now, so that's where it's not
Understood.
consistent in how this is being applied across the state. And
Could you include on the other, instead of other, specify the organization that's funding it?
or if it's grant or
Grant, yeah.
or just some organization that's paying.
We can
Yeah.
provide an updated table.
So what state or country they went to? Do you put that on or just a state?
No, the state means the state funded it,
State
but
funded.
you don't know where the
So you don't
conference
know where the
is.
conference
Yeah.
is. We gotta adjust the questionnaire then to them to put
Okay.
I
the.
mean, Molokai Family Court, that's pretty obvious. You know,
We can provide an updated table with that information.
but
Other things, like focus groups.
Especially
Supervisor
$3,000, $4,000.
National Council.
so what's the final decision, or what's the most recent decision on how this works between the judiciary employees having one set of ethical standards and the judges having a different one?
That is the current, judges report to the Conduct Commission, or not report to, but are subject to the Judicial Code of Conduct under this Hawaii Supreme Court, because the Hawaii Supreme Court, under the Constitution, governs judges and their conduct.
Okay.
And
So the Supreme Court determined that they've exempted themselves out of the ethics code.
I believe that may be in the Constitution, but I will need to check and get back to you that as to the applicability of the state ethics code. But I will check and get back to you, Senator. I don't want to misspeak.
Okay.
But the remainder of
But you
judiciary
think that the
employees,
judiciary could be exempt from the ethics code based on the Constitution.
I will confirm and get back to you.
Okay.
The remainder of the employees are subject, as a state employee, subject to the state ethics code.
Okay, but they're all part of the judiciary branch,
Yes,
which is a separate branch of government.
yes.
So that's where it's kind of confusing that everybody in the branch that's not a judge has to follow statewide law, but the judges do not.
Understood.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, thank you. We're going to recess for 5 minutes so that we can have the AG set up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, reconvening. Next, we're going to hear from the Department of Attorney General, who will present their supplemental budget request. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chair Dela Cruz and Rose and members of the Ways and Means and Judiciary. I know you want to go right to Table 6, so if I could just share a couple of really important highlights. We did reduce our vacancy rate 50% from last year,
Up, Randy.
and we've done it for a couple of reasons. One, because
Because you worked with D-Herd.
partly.
Why is everybody laughing?
One is the appropriations allow us to continue to be competitive in the commercial market with our deputies. The second is that we did attend 11, thank you, job fairs. And that played a big part of it. All of our supervisors are attending these as opposed to just our HR, so they can talk to people directly. And the other thing that we're doing that I'm excited about, and we're waiting for DHERD blessing, is we are trying to make a change to our legal assistants who are Unit 3 to create an advanced legal assistant position so that there's some place for them to go and move up in the department. So as soon as we get that done, we will start implementing that as well. For federal legislation or federal work, I wanted to review the state is a party to 39 lawsuits, 3 of which our office took lead on. The Democratic AG Coalition has obtained 16 preliminary injunctions and 5 final judgments. Those efforts have prevented close to $1 billion of congressionally appropriated funds leaving Hawaii. That includes $500 million owed to the state by FEMA, $365 million owed to DOT, 89 to DOH, 33 to DOE, and over $100 million to UH.
Can you tell us what table that is?
This is just actually my testimony, yeah.
Page 7.
No, yeah, she's gonna go through that and then we're gonna go through tables.
Thanks.
And I'm assuming our litigation funds are on one of those tables, so we can go through that when.
Yeah, we're just not used to beginning with so many accomplishments when we have
I know.
info briefing.
Really excited about them, so thank you. Let's move on.
Chair, who's
Yeah, I
really
mean,
kind.
hopefully the other departments are watching. 'Cause and then they have a list of accomplishments.
There, right? All right, table 6. I think you guys all know that Brendan is the superstar here. And I'm gonna let him take point on answering all of your table questions.
Okay, you wanna start with priority 1?
Sure. Brendan Kinoshita, Administrative Services Manager for the department. We have very few asks this year. I think, the department tried to be very cognizant of the state's current fiscal position and being mindful of that. So our priority 1 is a increase to our line item budget for litigation expenses. Last session, the legislature did provide a increase to our litigation budget for fiscal 26, and then that was to 5 million, and then increase the base for fiscal 27 to 3 million. We're asking for 1 million to increase that to 4 million, largely in part to be prepared for additional costs that may be incurred as we continue through federal litigation. On average, I would say, so for fiscal years 24 and 25, we have spent more than $3 million on litigation expenses not related to the federal litigation. So 3 million is a base for our general litigation requirements, but the additional 1 million would be to supplement that for anything that may occur outside of that. Our priority number 2 is a request to increase the special fund ceiling for our Medicaid fraud control unit. That unit operates on a 75-25% match, with the federal government funding 75%. Those funds have not been at jeopardy of being reduced. And so we did get a notice of award. Our award is larger than previous years. And so in order to maximize the state match, we just need to increase the appropriation ceiling. So they have sufficient special fund cash in the account. They just require the additional ceiling in order to expend up to the match amount.
More was the increase and how much more is the match that we are asking for?
So the increased match, I believe the shortfall is about $147,621. We rounded that up to 200,000 just in case there's additional increases, adjustments for fringe, anything like that. And then our priority item 10, I will just summarize. This is to increase staffing and operating costs for the Law Enforcement Standards Board. The LASB is an attached agency to the Department of the Attorney General. So, we are the vehicle for the agency to get their budget request in front of the legislature, but we will defer any questions specific to their program operations to LASB. And then finally, our additional ask is an increase to our federal fund appropriation ceiling for the Hawaii Criminal Justice Data Center. Similarly, there's an anticipated increase in the amount of federal award that they will receive. And so we just need an increase in the appropriation ceiling so that they can have full access to those funds.
Any questions on the ads?
Yeah, I have one on on the litigation ad, how to phrase this. So your department has been criticized somewhat for spending all this money on fighting the federal government on stuff. But this is the money that's gone to. We spent $3 million to save $1 billion. Is that essentially?
Actually, no.
Spent less than $3 million.
Of the federal litigation funds, we have spent $12,015.17.
$12,000 to save $1 billion.
Yes.
That seems like a pretty good return on investment to me.
So.
Okay.
But we anticipate that to increase in the next year. This last year has been filing complaints and preliminary injunctions. So we haven't had discovery and depositions and trial. So as that occurs over the next year, we anticipate.
Expect it would be more expensive. Now, in terms of the prospects for having continued victories like this, I guess I'm a little pessimistic because a lot of the stuff you were litigating before was from federal bills that had passed the year before and had been signed into law by President Biden, and they were trying to cut that out. But now that the Republicans have been in control of the Congress for a cycle, there won't be those same kind of targets, I'm assuming. They'll just make the cuts, and they have the votes to do that, and so they make the cuts.
That is true. I think where we're going to see future lawsuits head, though, is their increased retribution and retaliation against states who have statutes and constitutions like ours that protect all kinds of
Reproductive
people.
rights.
Right.
Okay.
And so we're seeing some of that retaliation already. It hasn't happened in Hawaii, but we're beginning to see that. And I imagine that that may be where we go next.
So there were 5 blue states that were retaliated against recently on child support payments, I believe.
Correct.
We were not one of those?
We were not.
Okay. Okay, thanks, Chair.
They filed a lawsuit today,
Oh, they did.
fighting that back.
So are these costs just for Hawaii, or are we part of the group of attorneys general that are?
We've all been spending our own money for our
So it's not
litigation.
split across the board?
No. I will say, because we have now fully staffed 9 of our divisions, and we've been able to take care of our vacancies. We've been able to do most of our, well, all of our work in-house without stressing too much of our regular workload.
Thank you.
Can you just give us a status update on the 2 programs that we funded that you recently established to fight human trafficking and white collar crime?
50. Is Dave here?
No, you guys
He's
can
not.
just, that's something that the legislature added. And initially it was supposed to be 2 separate, but then you guys are the one who have to implement. So you thought it was a better idea to combine the.
Sure. First Deputy Attorney General Matthew DeVanche. So that division is called SIPTI, the Special Investigation and Prosecution Division. The decision to actually merge them into one division was made by the prior administration. So that's what happened.
Okay. So do you find that that's the right decision, or should it be looked at separately?
No, I think it's working out fine. They are split up. We have we have
branch.
prosecutors in each branch.
Yeah.
3 in each, and it's been working out very well. We've had great luck in hiring special agents to investigate these crimes. We draw heavily on former federal law enforcement who have experience doing trafficking investigations and white collar investigations. So it is bearing fruit. It does take time. White collar cases take a long time to work up, but we're starting to see the fruits of that.
Because we had put a lot of money toward, helping sex trafficking victims, but we've never actually prosecuted until we started establishing, this new division. And then the feds accused Hawaii of not really investigating any white collar crime. So then we put money in so that we could have our own white collar crime division, which you guys put into this new division. And then there's this whole thing about this $35,000 brown paper bag, but I think that people may not realize the Attorney General actually has a whole branch to investigate all of these things.
That's correct.
I would add that for the public integrity, SIPTI also is our public integrity unit. So they are also doing investigations, and it's about any kind of public employee who might be taking monies for personal use and that kind of thing. And so they've had we've had a few plea deals from that, from successful investigations.
Yeah, that's something that I think most people are not aware, that we put resources there. So they may not know that these investigations are going on. It's just that you're not announcing them.
We try.
Any other questions?
Can I add one more thing? I'm sorry. With respect to the sex trafficking, SIPTI was required to issue a report this year on the work that they've been doing related to sex trafficking. That report has been filed. So you should have access to copies of that. And it really provides an excellent, primer on the work that's been done and what recommendations they're making for moving forward.
Well, I'm surprised, and to their credit, is that they stood them up quickly. A lot of other agencies, you give them money to start a new branch or a new division, and it takes forever. But the Attorney General's office actually stood them up quickly, and then it's moving. It's actually investigating. It's, it showed some success. So.
And you brought lots of money in too.
Yes, I didn't highlight my $700 million settlement.
Can I ask you about the Crime Prevention and Justice Assistance Division? So according to your testimony, the department has identified that the Victims of Crime Act Victim Assistance Grant awarded by the U.S. Department of Justice is at risk for a reduction of federal funds. Can you, and it sounded like you were not going to try to backfill that money. Can you just tell us what the program is and what
I'm
the plan is?
asking Julia Bato. She is the supervisor of the Crime Prevention and Justice Assistance.
Great. Thank you. But so I'm just trying to figure out what's happening and what are we planning to what's the department's plan to deal with it if there is one?
Good afternoon. Julie Bato, as was mentioned, I'm the administrator for the Crime Prevention Justice Assistance Division. The Victim Assistance Program is a fund that comes out of the Office for Victims of Crime. It is a fund that comes out of the Crime Victim Fund where the U.S. attorneys, when they prosecute certain cases, monies such as penalties and fines go into the fund. There is a history starting from 2016 where there was a buildup of the fund. And so unbeknownst to states, the wisdom was to start pushing out a lot of monies. So there was a huge influx of monies that were going out to states. And really the Crime Victim Fund is meant to support direct victim services. So it equates to personnel costs. Subsequently, what happened was there was so much monies going out, but the Crime Victim Fund wasn't recovering at the pace that the monies were going out. So there was a subsequent drop. There have been attempts to try to stabilize the fund so that those increases and decreases won't spike quite as drastically. So we put in some numbers for you folks in that report, showing some of the ebb and flow. Last session, you folks did make permanent an increase in the victim assistance funds that the 4 prosecutors office gets. A lot of the monies from the Crime Victim Fund, the victim assistance monies, were supporting those offices. And so that increase at the state level helped offset some of those costs. What we're looking at is there's likely to be a dip in the federal monies for 27, and we're looking at bridge funding. So what also happened with this grant program was it was one of the few grant programs where you couldn't get an extension. Either you used the monies and it lapsed. And so part of the VOCA fix that was done by Congress in 2021 is to allow states to have a no-cost extension. So we're looking at when monies are not being spent to reallocate those monies to stretch it out longer. So for 2027, we're anticipating we're going to get some return monies. We can do some bridge funding and try to make up some of the shortfall. So for us at this point, it's a watch and see thing. The stabilization is much better. We're not seeing such high peaks and lulls in terms of what states are getting and therefore what we can pass on. So with that, we might have different news for you next session, but for the time being, we're not asking for any additional monies.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That helps.
Go ahead. Yeah. Thanks, Attorney General, for what's going on. Your request for the 200,000 to bump the ceiling for the 25% match. I got to thinking about that. With all the federal litigation, this federal funding, is that potentially going to be impacted? Meaning that are we going to become a target and a reduction in some of our funding? Because it seems a little paradoxical to me.
Right. The Medicaid fraud unit is actually a mandatory unit that is required to be in the Attorney General's office, and that's from Congress. So it is something we do to ensure that there's no fraud, waste, and abuse. And so with that, as well as some of our law enforcement monies, they haven't pushed to, decrease those things at this time. And we haven't really heard of an effort to do so yet. Let me just confirm. Is that true?
Correct.
That's true.
Okay, I just, for the obvious reasons, I
Right.
posed the question. They're gonna fund something that may be used against them. I mean, not directly, but you understand what I'm talking about. So,
Right. I think
Okay.
in that case, it will not be.
Thank you, Chair.
Senator Varela.
Since you guys brought up the victims of crime and, thank you for the helping in uncovering the fraud of the deeds and prosecuting or getting these guys arrested. But my question is to the victims. I mean, I know she was just talking about the crimes and victims, but most of these people are not getting their land back. Their lands were sold over and over. Is that would be covered under the victims' compensation when it comes to that? Because a lot of them lost their homes due to fraud with the notary and taking away their deeds and properties being sold on the market, and they lost their family's property or their own property at that point. Is there anything that we're having that they're going to be recovering for because of the victims funding that she was just talking about? Is that covered under that, or is it more personal?
It would not be covered under those funds. I think most of them are dedicated to victims of violent crime or domestic violence and so forth. I haven't been updated recently on what's happening with the deeds. I know that we've been successful, thanks in large part to information coming into our office. But I'm happy to see what's happening with that and give you an update later.
Because I know the one in Waianae, the families, they sold it before the family even was be able to get some kind of help from you guys to even recover. So they got like pennies on the dollar for the property, and the family's devastated because they lost their family members that they passed away, and when they found out person would illegally live in their home and transfer deed illegally. So is there anything that you guys are doing to not only to the prevention, but even going forward in not making it so easy so people can just go down to records and change the deed into other people's with fraudulent notaries?
No,
Right.
Someone that really should be Bureau of Conveyance fixing their systems, right?
Yes, absolutely. Part of that, but
If
that,
NAR comes in, we can ask, what are they doing?
yeah.
Yeah, because I know that they within the internal, they was trying to, that's how they ended up getting all the information to me, to I could give it to you guys, and you guys have the fraud department for the notary, right?
Right.
Yeah, so is there something that we can all work with, even like what Senator De La Cruz said, so that we can prevent this, because it's happening more than we even know, right?
Well, certainly we have uncovered more since those first indictments came out, with lawyers contacting our office saying, I never signed that. So we have uncovered more. We don't have anything happening right now, but of course, if the Bureau or DLNR needs assistance or a way to do something, we're more than happy to help.
Thank you, thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you, Chairman.
Any other questions? Okay.
Questions?
Yeah, go ahead. You have a question?
So how many investigators do you have?
I'm not sure of the actual number. We now have them divided up more into different areas. We have our tobacco enforcement. We're developing the new nuisance abatement group. Do you have those numbers, Brendan?
I can get you the exact number, Senator, but as AG mentioned, we have an investigations division that has investigators. We probably have about
It's probably about 20.
20.
Half of
And-
them
and
went to
DLO.
Department of Law Enforcement. So we used to have about 40, half of them left. So we have about 20 left in that division.
Establish 6 of them as of July 1, 2025.
Those are the nuisance abatement positions that were appropriated in a specific appropriation bill. So those have been established. The current status is we established them, we sent them to DHERD. All of our investigators in our investigations division currently are excluded from the bargaining unit, subject to Chapter 89, because they deal with confidential information. We made a request to HGEA to have these new investigators also excluded, consistent with all other investigator positions in the division. We just heard back on the 31st that HGA disagreed with our request to exclude those positions. And so now we're following up on next steps.
So you established 6, and according to your vacancies, you have 4 vacant. Is that correct? Is that?
So the vacancy table on table 11, those are all of the budgeted authorized positions. Because those positions that were appropriated via the specific appropriation, they're only good until June 30, 27.
Are they all filled then, I guess?
The nuisance abatement positions, none are filled yet.
Until they can negotiate with HGA. Yeah.
You have investigators that do investigations that are requested of individuals or department heads?
We have MOUs with a number of the departments where we get requests for investigations of any number of things. DOA, so now they're not DOA, DAB. Yeah. They may ask investigators to get involved with some activity that they think might be criminal. So they will have our investigators do that. We do some HR investigations.
So you charge them for doing those investigations? The department, they pay the department, or?
So it depends. Some positions, if they're authorized as MOFU interdepartmentally funded positions, then we do bill client agencies because the only source of revenue to fund those are through accounts payable. But the investigations division in general, I mean, there's referrals made to the department for an investigation, and then, the AG will make the determination about what is the best course of action to pursue with that investigation.
Okay, because when we met with DOTAX, we saw their line item, $50,000 for a consultant contract between the Department of Attorney General to investigate complaints against the Director of Taxation. So can you speak to that?
I can. It is typical in HR matters for our office to be the contracting agency. And typically the agency where the investigation needs to occur is the funding agency. And that's what happened in this case. We were the contracting agency, but in this case, the director is a former employee, and some of the statements in the complaint relate to our department, and we felt that it would be inappropriate for us to do the investigation. So an outside investigator was engaged.
So is it standard that the person being investigated stays on and work, or should they go on administrative leave? Because it's difficult for investigation to talk with current employees when the person being investigated are, I get complaints from these employees that they don't feel they can speak freely.
This is generally a case-by-case basis about what happens, and I'm not sure exactly how that decision was made. I am aware that the supervision of the employees involved in that complaint has been transferred to Kristen, and Gary has no involvement in any of that. I recognize that might not resolve the problem you're identifying right now.
But that's
hard.
That's but the only person that can put him on paid leave is the governor, not the AG.
Oh, I see. But is
Yeah,
that
the
that
AG can-
recommendation?
I
that
mean,
you-
they're both in the cabinet at
You don't-
somewhat the same.
Right.
He's a higher tier, but they're all cabinet members.
Right, exactly.
But you do advise on legal issues. So if there could be some legal ramifications, you would advise the governor, right?
Of course, if they asked for some of that advice, if there were concerns. We generally have actually had our supervising deputy, Amanda Donlin, is always available for directors and the governor to talk to about any of those kind of human resources.
Because I think the goal is to get to the bottom of it and get accurate information.
Absolutely.
If that's the goal, then it's very difficult in a situation where even though you move the employees, they're still working under the hierarchy that's there.
Right.
And then you have other situations, like in the Troy situation, where a person was put on leave. I don't know what happened to the investigation and whether you're doing that in your office. But, you know, there doesn't seem to be a systematic across the board kinds of policy on how we deal with these things. And it's very troubling because we get the calls from employees who feel intimidated.
Right. There are different ways that we handle it. The DHERD, I can't think of her name, who does the investigations. Yeah, Signe. She is fantastic. She does excellent investigations, but there's only one of her. And so sometimes if she's not available, then outside investigators will be engaged at that point. With respect to the Isaac Choi matter, that was an example where she was so overbooked that DHERD requested
But
to
in
hire.
that case,
But he was.
Isaac does not report directly to the governor. And so the supervisor, you know, there's different levels that determined he should be put on leave. In the case that we're talking about now, the supervisor is the governor.
Right.
And so that's where, you know, it just depends on the supervisor.
I would encourage you, though, if you ever have people call you who are concerned, I would invite them to contact my department.
Well, you know what? They're afraid. And they say that he came from the AG and that he has other people working in the department that from the AGs. And so they feel that the whole atmosphere is one of hostility and they don't feel that they can trust.
Right.
Right. So I'm
Well,
just
let me be
telling-
very clear publicly. That is unacceptable for anybody to fear anybody in my
Understand,
department.
but
If they
that's-
contact Matt or me directly, then they will be protected. I'm not going to go talk to other deputies about things. And I take that seriously, and
It's a fear of retaliation, and there have been retaliations within the department.
in my department.
No.
Oh. Right.
In the department that's.
Right.
The people are bringing the complaints to us.
I understand that, and I think that can happen throughout, well, any business and certainly within state government. But I'll again make the statement that it will not happen in my department. We will not retaliate. And if somebody wants to contact me, no, I know.
And you said for them to call you, I'm just saying the reason why they don't, because I did bring that up, is that they feel that, you know, the director having come from your office and that he is currently managers, the people that report to him that came from your office. And so they don't feel comfortable.
Okay. We can find, if you want to talk offline, we can find another way for them to have somebody to talk to about their concerns.
You talk with, maybe you can't talk about this, Ming though, because, I mean,
No,
the one that complained to me, but he did write a long complaint, gave it to the governor. I don't know, I think sent to you. So maybe you need to talk to him. I don't know.
as long as there's an outside investigator involved, I'm not going to reach out and talk to anybody and interfere with the work that's being
Okay,
done.
so then these employees that might be involved in that investigation can't contact you anyway.
No, but she's saying that they could maybe contact the independent investigator.
Well, they can contact me and I can absolutely reach out to the investigator to say,
Follow up.
I'm hearing these concerns and
follow.
is there a way for you to work with this?
Give that information.
Okay.
Chair, really quick, table 22, telework positions. I just wanted to highlight that currently the department has 32 authorized telework positions, 25 of which are deputy attorney general positions. So I'm going to pose this question similar to what I did in the last hearing, which is how can you be effective as a deputy AG? Also, there's one position, senior deputy counsel, to telework, where if you just go right down the line of budgeting, all of these positions are making over 100,000. So just doing the simple math, you're talking about $30 million for telework positions. So my first question is, how can we monitor the effectiveness of these positions if they are teleworking? And number two, is there a plan to get them back in person to, again, create the culture of in-person work system?
Right. As to the first one and the senior deputy that you identified, All I will say is that that is a reasonable accommodation. And we'll keep it that way, and I can't say anything else. Much of what,
Can I just say, when you say reasonable, is it in line with the policy or is it
Yes.
exception to the policy?
no, it's part of our policies. If somebody, requests a reasonable accommodation, then it's our obligation to
So if
try and do
somebody's
that.
sick, parent is sick, or they need to be a caretaker, is that a reasonable accommodation? I'm just trying to understand.
That's true. He was mumbling, that like a caretaker is not something that the DHERD policy would permit that. We do follow that policy, and I'd like to say that all of our deputies who do remote work, have completed their training for that. So we have 100% compliance. But each person is going to be different. And the reason many of our deputies,
Questioning that. I know it's her question. I just want to make sure that when you say a reasonable accommodation, that it doesn't violate what the policy is. Because I've had situations at the university and others that they have made exceptions and they have allowed caretaking, and then other people have complained about it. So I'm just wanting to know what that meant by reasonable accommodation.
Yeah, so Senator, when we say reasonable accommodation, we mean under the law, when people have a disability, they're entitled to a reasonable accommodation to perform their work, and we have to grant that,
But to me, I'm not sure what that means.
right? And it's, nobody's doing telework to do caregiving, or childcare or anything like that.
They're all on an island.
So one question on the legal. part.
I want to finish this because, a lot of work that lawyers do is incredibly boring, and it's sitting there reading contracts. It's, going through materials. So it's not necessarily necessary for them to be sitting in their office doing that. It is one of the important things that we can use to draw deputies to work for our department. In private practice, it is common for attorneys to have home offices or be able to work. We can work wherever we are. If I'm on a business trip, I can work from my hotel room. So that's part of the reason. Nobody is permitted to, unless there's like the reasonable accommodation, they work, it's a maximum of 3 days.
No, you have so many at 5 days.
We have one person at 5, I think.
At 5 days.
Those are all,
Yeah.
and those are all
To the list.
doing half days, right?
Yes, some of them are partial days, but they add up to 3 work days, but they could be.
It says here,
No,
number
but
of telework
when you,
days a week.
right, when you talk about the hours, so it can be 5 days, but they're partially in the office and partially teleworking.
Well, then what's 3 days and what's?
So why not just put
Yeah.
half?
We can try to do that next year.
We will do that next year.
Got 5 or 6 deputies at.
I can see
5
that
days.
is confusing, yes.
Legal clerks, you would
Yeah.
expect them to be.
So I'm not sure if you heard that explanation. So somebody might be working in the morning at home and then coming into the office.
Looking at what you gave. me.
Yeah.
Right. So if we need to make it,
Reason for telework, please don't put the same thing for every single one because it's not position is eligible. We know that. You need to tell us what they're doing and why they can work at home.
well, for most of the deputies, I think the answer is generally the same. It is an important tool for us to use to retain and to retain attorneys.
They do billing. They pay their attorneys based on how many hours they bill.
Exactly. And
So-
let me just say, during remote work, each of those deputies completes a timesheet every time they work. And they're super,
Be one of the more,
Yeah, they don't do billing attorneys.
yeah, but they're completely, they're doing the same kind of timesheet. And
15-minute.
I don't think they're 15 minutes.
15.
Yeah, I think, if I recall, we shared redacted copies of timesheets with you maybe 1 or 2 years ago. And I think it was in 15-minute increments generally. But they're pages and pages and they have to submit them every week.
Senator Kim, to your point about the private sector and, needing to keep track of billable hours for billing. As mentioned earlier, when we have MOUs with certain client agencies that are special funded, so, the ADC, the HCDA, HHFDC, et cetera, we do send those clients the billing sheet for the hours for the attorneys. So in those situations, whether those attorneys are working in the office or they're teleworking, there is an accounting of their time so that the client is paying.
If it's client, it's not done on a normal basis.
The timesheet keeping is done for all attorneys. Yeah.
And I'll
It's
say,
just the billing is not all the time.
right.
Correct.
And I'll say that the supervisors are monitoring their deputies and reviewing their timesheets. And there have been several instances where the supervisors have approached me because they felt like the deputy could not do their work during telework, and we yank it. We tell them they have to come back into the office.
So are these positions that are teleworking, are they managing other workers that are in person?
For the most part, not. I will say that there's a small handful. Some of them maybe have reasonable accommodations that do supervise others.
Yeah, I think, and that's great. Thank you. I think that maybe making that more specific in the columns would be helpful. Part-time, full-time, whether it's consecutive hours that total up to a day. I think those are important. And I think just simply saying reasonable accommodations and we leave it at that is pretty self-explanatory. But if you could give us a little bit more context, I think that would be helpful. Yeah.
Any other questions? If not, thank you. Adjourn.
Thank you.
Thank